Chapter 4465. Empress. General Colored Phoenix was shocked and hurriedly said, "Although Tao Wu has some strength, she is a woman after all. If she is banished to the soaring Dragon Mountain range, I'm afraid she will be in danger. Empress, please show mercy and spare Tao Wu." Damn it! The East Sea Empress was furious. "I've already made a decision, and you dare to disobey? Do you want to be banished to the lower realm too?" "I don't dare." General Colored Phoenix did not dare to say more. She lowered her head and followed the order. She directed the female general of Fragrance Hall to escort Tao Wu and urged the clouds to fly out of the magnificent mountain range. Xiaohua, Xiaohua. The East Sea Empress sat on the golden chair with a mysterious smile on her face. She thought to herself, "I'd like to see what kind of surprise you can bring me." Xiaohua naturally did not know that Princess Xian was suppressed in the heaven punishment prison crystal of the hidden immortal continent. He also did not know that the East Sea Empress was trying her best to scheme against him in order to save her daughter. At this moment, he was flying to the Chitty River with Suji and Fairy Xingyu. These three Dao sect cultivators could now be regarded as the supreme cultivators of the Dao sect in the three continents. However, they did not use any special magic. They just moved their bodies and flew high in the sky of the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. The speed of the three was not fast but not too slow either. Seeing the constantly changing scenery and the changes in the sky, Xiaohua naturally would not give up the opportunity to ask the two immortals for advice. Whether it was the questions he had during cultivation or his own guesses, he told them all. Xiaohua had a good impression of Xiaohua. He did not have much time to give him pointers during their previous meetings. Now that he had free time and wanted to borrow Xiaohua's power, Suji answered all of Xiaohua's questions. Looking at Fairy Xingyu, at first, she just pursed her lips and smiled. From time to time, she would mock Suji, saying that he wanted to take in a disciple before leaving the three continents. However, a few days later, as Xiaohua's questions became more and more profound, Fairy Xingyu could not help but speak. Fairy Xingyu's cultivation was not as high as Suji's, but she was the law envoy of the Palace of Justice. She knew many secrets of the immortal world and had seen many immortal cultivation techniques. Sometimes, Fairy Xingyu could answer Suji's questions very well. Of course, occasionally, there would be questions that the two immortals couldn't answer, causing them to argue. As they argued, the two immortals looked at each other. After all, Suji and Fairy Xingyu were immortals from the immortal world, while Xiaohua was only a Mahayana cultivator from the three continents. If Suji and Fairy Xingyu's cultivation was a lake, then Xiaohua was just a small puddle. However, when faced with Xiaohua's question, Suji and Fairy Xingyu felt that Xiaohua was no longer a small puddle. He might also be a lake. However, the lake might be smaller than them, but there were many waterways in the lake, and the waterways led to the boundless sea. Xiaohua was currently cruising around the edge of the lake, bitterly looking for the waterway that led to the sea. As long as Xiaohua found the direction that led to the boundless sea, regardless of the size of the waterway, it would not be able to stop his cultivation from growing like a hot knife through butter. At this point, Suji and Fairy Xingyu no longer doubted that Xiaohua could ascend. The only thing they wanted to know was what level Xiaohua would be when he ascended to the immortal world. However, they also guarded the secret of the immortal world and did not dare to reveal it. The only thing they could do was explain the profound meaning of cultivation to Xiaohua without reservation. After Xiaohua ascended to the immortal world, they could draw him into their sphere of influence. Of course, there was still a difference between Suji and Fairy Xingyu. Suji did not reveal his own selfish motives. He only tried his best to tell Xiaohua about the gains and losses of his cultivation. On the other hand, Fairy Xingyu often revealed some of the benefits of the Palace of Justice. Xiaohua was not in the mood to think too much. He only knew that he was now taking an immortal as his teacher. Every word from the two immortals was like a bright star in the sky, illuminating his cultivation path. He had long been immersed in an intoxicated state that was even more intense than ascension. Alas! Until one day, Fairy Xingyu sighed. "Xiaohua, your cultivation path is no longer difficult. All you need is time. From now on, even if you don't cultivate and sleep every day and night, your strength will slowly increase until the laws of the three continents can no longer tolerate you. They will wake you up and kick you directly to the immortal world. As for the tribulation, I can see it even with my eyes closed. How could the thunderbolt technique taught by the punishment envoy of the Palace of Justice not be able to withstand the thunder tribulation of ascension? If it weren't for the fact that entering the immortal world is a big crime, I would almost want to take you back to the immortal world. Xiao Hua's eyes flashed with starlight. Wisps of mystery swam in the starlight like chains. He raised his head in a daze. His thoughts had not awakened from the experience that should not exist in the three continents. He did not hear Fairy Xing use words at all. Don't listen to her nonsense, Suji said with a smile. No one knows what the result will be until the last step. Although I am the punishment envoy of the Punishment Palace and sometimes control the Thunder Tribulation, the Thunder Tribulation is the will of heaven and earth. Even an immortal cannot know the profound meaning of the Thunder Tribulation. Although you have cultivated the Thunderbolt technique, there is still a long way to go before you can resist the Thunder Tribulation. Well, if you still have time, you can experience the Fury of Thunder in Mo Yuntong. The Fury of Thunder is the thunder cultivation technique practiced by the punishment envoys of the immortal world. It is said that it was created a long time ago when the punishment celestial lord comprehended the thunder tribulation and refined the immortal slaying stage. Of course, the Fury of Thunder is still different from the thunder tribulation. It can only help you understand the thunder tribulation a little more. Haha, Fairy Xing Yu covered her mouth and laughed. Suji, didn't you say that you can't reveal the secrets of the immortal world? Why did you tell Xiao Hua what cultivation technique the punishment envoys practice? It doesn't matter. Suji glanced at Fairy Xing Yu with a rare trace of warmth in his eyes. He replied, Immortals are also humans. How can they not have feelings? For a cultivator like Xiao Hua, even if I have to risk being punished, I want him to enter the immortal world as soon as possible. If Xiao Hua enters the immortal world, you can't snatch him from me. Fairy Xing Yu pouted. Although he has already cultivated the Thunderbolt technique. Suji smiled but didn't say anything. Fairy Xing Yu hurriedly said to Xiao Hua, many of the cultivation methods I gave you are for the Master of Law of the Palace of Law to cultivate. For example, the Light and Cloud Light technique, the Swift and Lightning technique. Thank you, seniors. Xiao Hua blinked and the strange phenomenon around him disappeared. He bowed and said, in the past few months, I have gained too much. To put it bluntly, this junior has been cultivating for such a long time, but there has never been a professor who has been so kind to me. This junior's heart is filled with gratitude. You don't have to be so polite, Fairy Xing Yu said with a smile. When you go to the immortal world in the future, just listen to me. Suji said seriously, Xiao Hua, your aptitude is extraordinary, and we like you very much. But it is not your aptitude that makes me want to teach you. It is your mind and temperament. Not every cultivator of the Tao sect can take the dignity of ordinary people to heart, and they don't care about the life and death of the people in the world. You let Zhaixing Lu and the Luo Yi Merchant Union broadcast good seeds on the hidden immortal continent, and let the Fortune Gate in the soaring Dragon Mountain Range plant good seeds. The food you cultivated in the original Fiend God blood pool alone has saved countless people in the secular world. In today's hidden immortal continent, the Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect may not know who Taoist Xiao is, but ordinary people in the secular world know. Of course, they may not know that Taoist Xiao is Xiao Hua, but they really put Taoist Xiao in their hearts and are grateful to him. With this kindness, I can't not teach you what I have learned. Speaking of this, Suji raised his eyebrows and looked into the distance, intentionally or unintentionally, and said, Of course, I am just an ordinary law enforcer of the Punishment Palace. My cultivation may be higher than yours now, but in the future, I absolutely believe that you will be stronger than me. I only hope that no matter when and where you are in the future, you will not forget how good Fairy Xing Yu and I are to you today. Also, don't forget, the root of these good things. Don't forget your original heart and the justice you pursue. Boom. It was unknown whether it was because Suji's words came from the bottom of his heart and caused Xiao Hua to feel the same way, or because Xiao Hua had been comprehending an extremely profound cultivation technique for the past few months, and it had triggered his memories. As Suji's voice fell, Xiao Hua's mind rumbled, and then many scenes gushed out from who knows where, a grave mound. a skinny child, a strict father, and a few deafening words of reprimand. Xiaohua, be grateful. Remember, you must be grateful. Our family is relatively poor, and you left early. In the past 5 years, I know that your life has been more difficult and dangerous. I didn't fulfill my responsibility as a father and didn't teach you well. This isn't your fault. It's all my fault. Our family has received a lot of kindness from the Misty School. As they say, a drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring. You must remember that we must repay the kindness of the Misty School. Alas, last night, you talked about human nature in the Li family. Your father didn't know much about it. At that time, he didn't dare to disrespect you and didn't interrupt you. What you said may make sense, but I feel that although we can't be on guard against others, we shouldn't think too badly of others. I also know that the people in the martial arts world are sometimes very scheming, but justice lies in the hearts of people. Even if there is no heart, God is watching. Also, now that you have the ability, I don't want you to become a hero who is loved and respected by others. I just want you to become a righteous person who can face everyone with a grateful heart, a compassionate heart, and a chivalrous heart. These words seemed to be very far away, but Xiaohua felt as if they were right in his ears. Tears welled up in Xiaohua's eyes as a sense of homesickness inundated him. Father, grandmother, mother, are you all right? A grand ascension stage human, the center of attention of countless people, had finally found a trace of his lost memories in this faraway land. Chapter 4466. That's right. All law enforcers must have justice in their hearts. They must face all living things in the immortal world with a grateful heart, a compassionate heart, and a chivalrous heart. Only in this way can they face the thunder tribulation and their own immortal slaying stage with a pure heart. When Xiaohua's memories gushed out, he was extremely emotional. Wherever his thoughts reached, the immortal slaying stage in the space released faint lightning. This lightning killed all things, and also gave birth to all things. In the midst of life and death, a suction force that made Xiaohua's mind feel extremely close was born. Xiaohua didn't need to think too much. His mind had already fallen into the space. In the space, the immortal slaying stage that had been flashing with lightning along with Xiaohua's comprehension of the thunder art. At this moment, seeing Jade Archive Xiaohua appear, it released a dazzling brilliance, like a thunder flower in full bloom. Jade Archive Xiaohua couldn't help but turn into a stream of light and fall into this thunder flower. Xiaohua's emotions were slightly shaken, and ring-shaped thunderbolts immediately appeared around his body. Crack, crack, crack. They rushed out in all directions. Suji and Fairy Xingyu were stunned. Just as they were about to activate their Dharma power to resist, they saw the weakness in Xiaohua's eyes. Their hearts skipped a beat. The two of them looked at each other. With a flash of their bodies, they went far away, leaving the thunderbolts swimming around Xiaohua and flashing wantonly. Suji, Fairy Xingyu saw Xiaohua's figure looming in the thunderbolt, as if his whole person had turned into a thunderbolt. Her heart was filled with surprise as she whispered, I can't understand Xiaohua anymore. That's right. Suji also whispered, especially now. Back then, I saw Celestial Venerable Master of Laws personally make a move. Fairy Xingyu nodded and said, in my memory, that palm was like the entire heavenly Tao appearing in front of my eyes. I feel that, even if I cultivate for another 100,000 years, I won't be able to compare to a grain in the Celestial Venerable's hand. Although Xiaohua's strength is not as strong as ours, from the thunder he turned into, I actually saw that kind of vague feeling, a feeling of the heavenly Tao overflowing. Could it be that he is the reincarnation of a Celestial Venerable? Sure. Although Suji knew that he was talking to Fairy Xingyu, he hurriedly stopped her from guessing. Xiaohua is Xiaohua. A Celestial Venerable is a Celestial Venerable, even if it's an immortal king. It has nothing to do with us. We formed a relationship with Xiaohua in the 3 continents, but now that we've arrived at the Celestial Realm, I really don't know if this is fate or not. Let's just do what we need to do. Don't say too much. Fate. Fairy Xingyu's eyes were also watery. She raised her hand to hold Suji's arm, tilted her head slightly to Suji's shoulder, and whispered, "I'm really grateful to the heavens. If it weren't for this fate, my soul would have been destroyed long ago." Well? Suji's body stiffened slightly, and he slowly withdrew his arm. He forced a smile on his face and said, "Actually, as long as it's an immortal from the immortal realm, if they encounter such a situation, anyone would help." Humph. How boring. Fairy Xingyue snorted coldly. Not as interesting as Xiao Hua. Sigh. Suji sighed and shook his head slightly. However, after a while, Fairy Xingyue smiled again and whispered, "Suji, you've never told me about your hometown. Since you've told me, tell me more about it." Suji looked at Xiao Hua's figure flickering in and out of the lightning. This figure was sometimes in human form, sometimes in the form of lightning, and sometimes even in the form of a heart. Suji could feel the familiar aura of thunderous fury emerging from the core of this heart. Suji suppressed the surprise in his heart and didn't dare to disturb Xiao Hua too much. He flew another 100 kilometers and released his divine sense. While guarding Xiao Hua, he said, "My memories of my hometown have faded, but there are many interesting things that happened there. I remember when I was young." Fairy Xingyue cupped her cheeks with both hands and stared at Suji with a smile on her face. Weren't the memories that Suji was talking about her memories as well? She didn't know how long it had been since a man had been so patient and talked so tirelessly. He opened up the memories of time bit by bit and gradually filled the cracks in her heart with love. Love was never an expression of ordinary people. The demon clan, cultivators, and immortals, no matter how long they had been cultivating, when love came, they had no power to resist. Because love was destined, it was irresistible and inexplicable. More than a month had passed, and the cold wind was gradually blowing. Suji frowned and looked at the flashing lightning in the distance. At this time, the lightning was different from before. The unruly and arrogant feeling was gradually gone, and the anger contained within was gradually born. Similarly, Xiao Hua's figure had completely turned into a thunderbolt, but this thunderbolt was condensed into the shape of a heart. Suji, Fairy Xingyue, was also a little impatient. She secretly whispered, "It seems that the time for the Star Moon Palace to appear is coming. Why don't we wake Xiao Hua up?" "No." Suji spoke resolutely and decisively. "Even I've only encountered the lightning transformation stage twice in the immortal dimension. Xiao Hua has just come into contact with the fury of thunder, and he can have such a realization. His future thunder cultivation technique is limitless. We'll go there ourselves. There's no need to wake him up." "But," Fairy Xingyue was puzzled. "Didn't your divination say that he is your hope? The mystery of opportunities is not something that can be understood by divination." Suji replied faintly, "If I ruin Xiao Hua's opportunity for the sake of my opportunity, this opportunity, I'd rather not have it." "Okay." Fairy Xingyue bit her lip and said, "I'll listen to you. You go first." Suji glanced at Xiao Hua, as if he was worried. Fairy Xingyue stamped her feet in midair and said reproachfully, "You're so scheming. I didn't think of waking Xiao Hua up." With that, Fairy Xingyue moved her body and left, taking advantage of the north wind. Suji thought for a while and set up a few simple restrictions. His body flashed with a blue watery light and disappeared in midair. However, just as the two of them flew 1,000 miles away, an earth-shattering sound of thunder came from behind them. Suji and Fairy Xingyue hurriedly stopped. Without releasing their divine senses, they saw that in the distant sky, a bolt of lightning shot straight into the sky like a jade pillar. In that bolt of lightning, Xiao Hua's godlike figure appeared. Looking at the space above Xiao Hua's head that had been torn apart by the lightning, layers of shadows fell. That shadow was like an inkstone, but also like a tombstone, exuding a kind of silence and desolation. Immortal. Immortal slaying stage? No. This is the sound of thunder from the fury of thunder. Suji could not help but exclaim, "Is Xiao Hua really a genius? He can comprehend the sound of thunder just by relying on the catalog of the immortal slaying stage that I gave him?" Buzz, buzz, buzz. As they spoke, an inexplicable sound rushed to them. Wherever this sound passed, not only did the ancient trees and withered grass on the ground turn into powder, but even the rocks and gravel on the surface of the ground were shattered. Whirlpools appeared on the water surface. Even the two immortals felt as if they were being whipped by thousands of whips. Fairy Xingyue said with a wry smile, I also want to deny it, but he doesn't have the aura of the immortal slaying stage on him. He can't cultivate the fury of thunder with the help of the immortal slaying stage. While the two of them were overestimating Xiaohua's divine senses swept over. In just a moment, Xiaohua's figure turned into a bolt of lightning and he asked curiously, Seniors, why didn't you wait for me? Fairy Xingyue rolled her eyes at him and said, We didn't dare to wait any longer. If we waited any longer, you would have become a celestial master. Hehe, sorry. Xiaohua said with a smile, I haven't been in closed-door cultivation for a long time. It's rare for me to be in closed-door cultivation today. I've kept you waiting. Oh? Fairy Xingyue hit the nail on the head and exposed Xiaohua's lie. Haven't you been in closed-door cultivation in the heavenly prison for tens of thousands of years? How can you say that you haven't been in closed-door cultivation? Ouch! Xiaohua touched his nose, as if he suddenly remembered something. He said anxiously, By the way, I remember something. What is it? Suji asked. Seniors, do you know where the water origin is in the three continents? Xiaohua didn't intend to know the answer. He just wanted to change the topic. It was not beyond his expectations. Not only Suji, but Fairy Xingyue also showed a wry smile and said, Do you think the water origin is innate heavy water? I've cultivated for so long, but I've never seen the water origin. If you know where it is, please let me know in advance. I also want to watch the fun and broaden my horizons. Suji nodded and said, Xingyue is right. The origin is too rare. When a realm is born, the origin of the five elements will exist. However, as time passes, the origin will either dissipate in the realm or be obtained by others. I don't know how long the three continents have existed. They must have been obtained long ago, right? Moreover, not to mention with your cultivation, even with our strength, it would be useless to obtain this origin source item, unless a heavenly venerable or immortal king. At this point, Suji stopped talking. He looked into the distance and said, Let's hurry. It's getting late. I'm sure the disciples of Zhai Xinglu are waiting anxiously. All right. Xiaohua successfully changed the topic. Although there was regret on his face, he didn't care. Let's go. Fairy Xingyue turned into the wind. Suji and Xiaohua were like lightning, flying into the distance. In less than 10 days, there were more and more crimson rocks around the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Sometimes, the crimson rocks almost covered the entire mountain range. Xiaohua understood that they were about to reach the Chitty River. On this day, the sky had just brightened. The pale sun peeked out from the horizon. Fairy Xingyue's floating figure slowly slowed down. She raised her hand and pointed at a place that was almost invisible to the naked eye. We've reached Zhai Xinglu. It seems that Xingyue Palace hasn't appeared yet. Let's go to Zhai Xinglu to rest first. Chapter 4467. As her fingers moved, Fairy Xingyu's face gradually changed, finally turning into the appearance of a graceful woman. Xiaohua glanced at it and couldn't help but ask, Senior, is this your original appearance? Fairy Xingyu smiled and said, Why? Are you reluctant to part with Princess Baihua? No. Xiaohua stole a glance at Suji and replied, Junior is just curious and casually asking. Then what do you think? Fairy Xingyu had no intention of answering Xiaohua at all. Xiaohua shrugged, indicating that he couldn't guess. Suji said indifferently, Neither Xingyue nor I have our original appearances. Our appearances can't be revealed on the three continents. What you see is an illusion. All right, this junior understands. Seeing that Suji's appearance had also changed, Xiaohua tactfully shut his mouth. While they were talking, several divine senses and clear eyes swept over. When they landed on the three of them, they retracted their gazes happily. After a short while, a dozen or so Confucian martial grandmasters around the 7th grade of origin energy flew over. They were either dressed in Confucian robes or armor. When these martial grandmasters saw Fairy Xingyu, they bowed respectfully and said, Subordinate greets Palace Master. And Fairy Xingyu nodded, and waved her hand to signal them to get up. She raised her hand and pointed at Su Ji and Xiao Hua, saying, "These are my good friends, Senior Su and Spiritual Master Xiao. When you see them, it's like seeing me." Yes. The dozen or so Confucian cultivators didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly bowed to the two ninth-level cultivators, saying, "Greetings, Senior Su and Spiritual Master Xiao." However, when the three words Spiritual Master Xiao came out, several Confucian cultivators came to their senses and exclaimed, "Spiritual Master Xiao? Xiao Hua? Spiritual Master Xiao of the Fortune Gate?" Xiao Hua touched his nose, regretting that he didn't disguise himself. He nodded slightly and said, "Yes, it's me. It's really Spiritual Master Xiao. It's really Spiritual Master Xiao." At this time, the dozen or so Confucian cultivators were all excited. Junior thought that Spiritual Master Xiao had returned to the hidden immortal continent. "I really didn't expect to see Senior here." Fairy Xingyu looked at Su Ji, who was somewhat neglected, and asked, "What's wrong? Is Spiritual Master Xiao very famous now?" "That's right, Palace Master. Don't you know?" A Confucian cultivator nodded vigorously. "Right now, one demon and one human are in the limelight in the Thousand Demons sacred realm. One of them is the heaven-defying Thunder Phoenix who has just become a 7-star great saint. This great saint of the demonic race is the first great saint of the Great Holy Temple, and he was the one who facilitated the 7 saints to become sworn brothers. Although this great saint doesn't have any power of his own within the Thousand Demonic sacred realm, when he entered the Great Holy Temple, he attracted the congratulations of tens of thousands of stars. Who knows how many demonic races have benefited from this?" Another Confucian cultivator continued, "And this person is naturally the Fortune Gate's Taoist Xiao. It is said that Taoist Xiao fought the 3 great saints of the demonic race, the golden-winged great roc, the 5-colored sea god shell, and the flying feather-void beast alone in Bai Qingyu. He even commanded hundreds of thousands of Fortune Gate's disciples to massacre Bai Qingyu, flattening the heaven-concealing ridge and ancient Bell Mountain. If it weren't for the heaven-defying Thunder Phoenix, Taoist Xiao and the 3 great saints of the demonic race would have turned hostility into friendship, and I'm afraid that another great saint of the demonic race would have fallen." "It seems it's not that complicated." Xiao Hua rubbed his nose and wanted to explain, but before he could say anything, another Confucian cultivator shouted, "Not only that, Taoist Xiao was very angry because his good friend was suppressed in Bai Qingyu. When he ordered the Fortune Gate's disciples to return to the hidden immortal continent, they were to kill the demonic race along the way. They must walk a bloody path." And the Fortune Gate's disciples did exactly that, steadily advancing from Bai Qingyu to the North Sea and East Sea. Wherever they passed, rivers of blood flowed, and many demonic races were killed. "This is purely a rumor." Another Confucian cultivator hurriedly refuted, "The information I received is not like this. The Fortune Gate's disciples did not kill too many demonic races. They only killed the demonic races that blocked their path. As long as there was no resistance, they never made a move. There are some problems with the information you received." Another Confucian cultivator with a slightly shorter stature shouted, his scarlet-red face showing a layer of agitation. Wherever the Fortune Gate's disciples went, all the demonic races in the Thousand Demonic sacred territory trembled in fear. None of them dared to show their prowess. Of course, according to this old man's knowledge, there are close to 400 to 500 demonic races and 37 demonic kings in the 37 demonic territories near the North Sea, and they are urgently discussing how to stop the Fortune Gate's disciples. However, because Taoist Xiao had issued an order when the Fortune Gate's disciples set out, they were to kill anyone who stood in their way. Therefore, these demonic kings did not dare to act blindly without thinking, and they are currently seeking help from the Great Sage Hall. Damn it, this is so satisfying. At this point, the Confucian cultivator bowed deeply to Xiao Hua and said, "Taoist Xiao, Junior Zhu Hong is in charge of the star-picking tower in the Thousand Demonic sacred territory. Although Junior has not been humiliated in the Thousand Demonic sacred territory, in this demonic territory where humans are inferior to dogs, I have seen all the humiliation the demonic races have done to our human race. Junior has never been so happy as today. Taoist Xiao is the pride of our human race, the leader of our human race. Taoist Xiao, although your reputation is like the sun in the midday sky in the thousand demonic sacred territory, and this news has not been approved by the palace master, we dare not leak it. Even in the star-picking tower, not many people know about it. But rest assured, your reputation is like rolling thunder. Before long, before the Fortune Gate's disciples set foot on the hidden immortal continent, your name will be known throughout the world. Seeing that the Confucian cultivators were so excited that they ignored her and were about to crowd around Xiaohua, Fairy Xingyu's face turned sullen, and she said angrily, Xiaohua, you, I treated you as a relative in vain. You caused such a big commotion in the thousand demonic sacred territory, and you didn't even tell me? Xiaohua was speechless, and he argued, Senior, it's not that Junior didn't want to tell you, but this matter of fighting and killing really spoils the mood. Moreover, no matter how big of a commotion Junior caused, isn't it not as powerful as Senior Xingyu? Senior, look at your subordinates. Which one of them isn't an all-powerful figure? Which one of them isn't capable of doing earth-shattering things? It's just that they can't act casually for the sake of Xingyu's development. Junior didn't have such scruples and dared to act. Humph, your mouth is smeared with honey. Fairy Xingyu curled her lips in disdain, but her face was smiling like a flower. Suji frowned and asked, I forgot to ask you, who is that little white dragon whose soul is similar to yours? Oh, his name is Xiaobai. His original body was a giant python. Later on, he cultivated into a python dragon, and his physical body was destroyed. His primordial spirit cultivated with Junior, and after he took over Junior's body, it was somewhat similar to Junior's. The ancient Bell Mountain's Demon King coveted Junior's fortune gate, and the seven-colored sea god Shell also had some matters to discuss with Junior, so they took Xiaobai as Junior and captured him. Xiaohua concisely explained the cause of the matter, but when Suji heard Xiaohua mention the seven-colored sea god Shell, a look of shock appeared on his face. He raised his hand and said, It's not too late to talk about this in the star-picking tower. Yes, Senior. Xiaohua hurriedly shut up. Let's go. Fairy Xingyu ordered and flew to the front. Suji naturally ignored the Confucian cultivators and followed behind. Xiaohua was about to follow when he saw the dozens of Confucian cultivators looking at him eagerly. He thought for a moment, slowed down, and raised his hand. Fellow immortals, let's go together. Yes, Senior. Zhu Hong was overjoyed and flew over first. A few other Confucian cultivators hurriedly followed, and the rest flew at the back with smiles on their faces. Those who surrounded Xiaohua were basically generals in armor. They were straightforward, and Xiaohua's massacre of Bai Qingyu was very satisfying and greatly boosted the morale of the human race. They admired Xiaohua greatly, and some of them became familiar with Xiaohua in less than half a cup of tea. Seeing that Xiaohua was not arrogant and was also Fairy Xingyu's relative, they soon talked about everything. Xiaohua had always been curious about this mysterious Xingyu. It seemed that Xingyu's tentacles were spread all over the 3 continents. Not to mention anything else, even Fairy Xingyu and Suji didn't know that Xiaohua massacred Bai Qingyu and led the troops south. But Xingyu had already received the news, and most of the news was true, which made Xiaohua really admire her. Yingpa and Xiong Yi could be considered outstanding in this regard, but the Fortune Gate and the Continuous Merchant Union were far inferior to Xingyu. Therefore, Xiaohua himself also became acquainted with these Confucian cultivators. Looking at the mountain-like pavilion in front of him, Xiaohua had already chatted a lot with these generals. Xiaohua already knew that these dozens of Confucian cultivators were the masters of the star-picking tower in the Thousand Demons sacred realm. They had gathered here because Fairy Xingyu had closed the star-picking tower in the Thousand Demons sacred realm. It was also because they had made great contributions to Xingyu that Fairy Xingyu allowed them to enter the Star Moon Palace. Of course, these masters were puzzled by Fairy Xingyu's decision to close the star-picking tower. This was because the star-picking tower in the Thousand Demons sacred realm was different from the hidden immortal continent and the pure land of ultimate bliss. There were many demon races in the Thousand Demons sacred realm who were willing to trade with the star-picking tower in exchange for what they wanted. Similarly, the star-picking tower could also obtain demon fruits, demon herbs, and other things that the human race couldn't normally obtain from the demon races. It could be said that the star-picking tower's profits in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm were more than those of the hidden immortal continent and the pure land of ultimate bliss. Xiaohua naturally understood Fairy Xingyu's plan. If the Star Moon Palace was as Su Ji had divined, it would be her and Su Ji's last chance. Moreover, it would also be her most confident chance. Therefore, Fairy Xingyu had to wrap things up well. Although the Star Moon Palace was huge, it might not have any supreme cultivators. At most, it might have some ninth-grade Essence Force worshippers. If there were no supreme cultivators protecting it in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, the star-picking tower would definitely be targeted by the demon race. If one of the many star-picking towers was invaded by the demon race, then there would be a snowball effect. Not only all the star-picking towers in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, but even the star-picking towers in the hidden immortal continent and the pure land of ultimate bliss would also be affected. Fairy Xingyu wouldn't let the star-picking tower fall to such a state. Therefore, she had made such a plan. Chapter 4468. Xiaohua didn't think too much about it before, but when he saw how dejected these tower masters were, it was obvious that they didn't want to give up on their previous efforts. Of course, he couldn't tell these tower masters about Fairy Xingyu's plans, so he asked about the secrets of the 3 continents and the situation of the Dao sections. Xiaohua's questions didn't involve Fairy Xingyu, so these tower masters didn't have any scruples and answered with a smile. In the end, Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly asked, "By the way, I met a fellow immortal called Zhu Qing in the Bronze Pillar Nation's star-picking tower. Do you know where he is now?" "Ioyo, I got it." A slightly powdery Confucian cultivator next to Zhu Hong slapped his forehead and shouted, "I'm Zhu Qing's good friend." Zhu Qing once said that he met an extremely interesting Dao cultivator in the Bronze Pillar Nation, and he admired this cultivator a lot. He said that this cultivator was only at the 3rd or 4th stage of Essence Qi, but he needed a rare benevolent heart and filled the book of heroes of our star-picking tower. I really didn't expect that this Dao cultivator was Daoist Master Xiao. Xiaohua looked at the Confucian cultivator's coquettish appearance and his slightly pinched fingers, and goosebumps rose all over his body. He hurriedly shrunk his neck and asked, "Where is fellow immortal Zhu Qing now? I also want to ask him if his book of heroes is filled." "I'll let you know, Daoist Master Xiao." The Confucian cultivator smiled and replied, "Although Zhu Qing isn't a tower master and his strength is average, he has made a lot of contributions to our star-picking tower. Now, he has received the Palace Lord's favor and has been escorted to the star-picking tower." "Haha, very good." Xiaohua nodded slightly. He also understood that the so-called contribution should be the body of Princess Baihua. However, it was also because of Zhu Qing that Princess Baihua didn't die in the countryside. This drinking and pecking was really wonderful. While they were talking, the star-picking tower of the Thousand Demons' sacred realm was already in sight. This star-picking tower was different from the one Xiaohua had seen in the Bronze Pillar Nation. It was in the shape of a tower. This pagoda was different from the ordinary pagodas of the Buddhist sections. It was very fat and large. Just from afar, it looked like a square. The tower-shaped Zhai Xinglu was divided into more than 10 levels. Each level had a different color, and each level was slowly rotating. Because of the different speeds and angles of the rotation, the light and shadow of the entire Zhai Xinglu was constantly changing. Sometimes it was flames, sometimes it was colorful lotuses, sometimes it was flower buds. This light and shadow was really dazzling in the cold red mountain range. "Xiaohua, this is Star-Picking Tower's jade pendant." Fairy Xingyue, who had been flying in front, suddenly raised her hand and a stream of light flew over. She said, "Take this jade pendant, and you can freely enter all the pavilions in Star-Picking Tower." "Okay." Xiaohua didn't mind and casually took it. The group of Confucian cultivators next to him raised their eyebrows and showed surprise in their eyes. However, this surprise disappeared in a flash, and they didn't even exchange glances with each other. Boom! Just as Fairy Xingyue finished speaking, a layer of fiery starry flames suddenly appeared in front of her and Su Ji. This starry flame completely enveloped the space within a few miles. A wave of air mixed with cold ice immediately emerged from the void. Moreover, amidst the biting cold wind, The power of the stars and moon fell out of thin air. A chilling and tint spread all over the place. Hee, Xiaohua, what do you think of my waning moon chilling star array? Fairy Xingyue asked with a smile, ignoring the starry flames that had descended. She turned her head to look at Xiaohua contentedly. Upon hearing this, Xiaohua almost fell from the sky. He had been surprised when he saw the starry flames appear. Logically speaking, it was impossible for Fairy Xingyue to trigger a large array outside his Zhaixing Lu. Now that he heard Fairy Xingyue's words, he understood that Suji had praised the capital star array of Black Wind Ridge very much. Xiaohua had replied with a little self-satisfaction, and Fairy Xingyue had remembered it. She was actually showing off here. Elder sister. Xiaohua held his forehead with one hand and said, You are the master of Xingyue. How can I compare myself to you? My large array can only resist cultivators of the 4th grade of origin energy, but your large array can resist great demons and demon kings of the 7th or 8th grade of origin energy. This waning star-chilling moon grade array is far from being comparable to my Fortune Gates capital star array. Hee. Fairy Xingyue flicked her sleeve, and a brilliance like the stars gushed out and landed on the starry flames. The starry flames slowly extinguished and disappeared into the void. Then, Fairy Xingyue moved her body again. Just as she was about to move, Suji, who was beside her, said indifferently, Although the waning moon chilling star array is sharp, it's much weaker than the capital star array. Fairy Xingyue's body also stagnated and fell a few feet before she flew up again. She turned her frosty face and stared at Suji, saying, Suji, will you die if you say something nice? After saying that, she ignored Suji and turned into a ray of starlight, disappearing instantly. Suji's expression did not change. He looked at Fairy Xingyue's back and moved his body. However, as soon as he moved, hundreds of meteor phantoms appeared from all directions, sealing off the area within 1,000 feet of Suji. Moreover, the space within this 1,000 feet swayed as if it was being blown by the wind. The meteors seemed to be dragging their tails as they struck Suji. Boring. Suji spat out 2 words indifferently. He raised his right hand and pointed his index finger at the void. Layers of water-blue lightning surged out like a fountain, rushing in all directions at an extremely fast speed. Kacha! Amidst the crackling sounds, all of the meteors were shattered and turned into nothingness. Then, Suji's body flew slowly and landed on the top floor of Zhaixing Lu in the distance. Sigh. Xiaohua shook his head helplessly behind the two of them. He secretly cursed, damn it. He's an immortal who knows how old he is, yet he's still involved in these romantic affairs. It's really nauseating. Senior Su, you obviously have some feelings for Fairy Xingyue. Why didn't you make it clear? When you appeared as Do Shanjun back then, weren't you also extremely handsome? Didn't those women from the Bronze Pillar Nation go crazy for you? Could it be that the real Fairy Xingyue doesn't dare to confess? Oh, I understand. Xiaohua came to a realization. According to Fairy Xingyue, Punisher Heavenly Venerate doesn't seem to get along well with Ruler Heavenly Venerate. If the two of them develop feelings for each other, I'm afraid it won't be easy to deal with. Damn it, it's really uncomfortable to be an immortal. Xiaohua flew back to the place where Suji had shattered the waning moon chilling star array. The aura of the shattered void had not been completely annihilated. Xiaohua's protective brilliance was still cut open. While Xiaohua had witnessed Suji's strength, he was also quite convinced by him. That day in the Bronze Pillar Nation, Xiaohua's bullying of Do Shanjun could be said to have caused Do Shanjun to lose face. Even during the battle at the Black Wind Ridge, Xiaohua had not let Do Shanjun off easily. Xiaohua now knew that Do Shanjun could have pinched him to death with a finger at that time. However, Suji had not taken out any special magical power. He had only used a Confucian magical power that was suitable for Do Shanjun to fight with Xiaohua. Even though he had been defeated, he had still used any magical power of the Dao sect. Xiaohua could not compare to his self-restraint and breadth of mind. It seems that the job of a punishment envoy is not something that any immortal can do. Xiaohua sighed. I don't know how Senior Su cultivated before he became an immortal. What kind of place is his hometown? It can actually cultivate such an outstanding immortal. Naturally, There were restrictions around the star-picking tower. However, since Xiao Hua had the jade pendant given to him by Fairy Xingyue, he naturally would not be stopped. He also landed at the top of the star-picking tower. At the top of the star-picking tower was a palace that did not look big, but had an enormous space inside. When Xiao Hua entered, Suji was already sitting on a futon. He was holding a jade eye in his hand and looking at it with a frown. Fairy Xingyue was lying on a strange net woven from soft vines. She was suspended in the air, and her snow-white jade feet were swaying like crystals. Xiao Hua's gaze moved away from the toenails that were painted with starlight. With a wave of his hand, he picked up a spirit fruit that seemed to be 5 stars from a jade table and took a light bite. A ball of fiery juice rushed into his mouth. Xingyue. Suji put down the jade eye and looked at Fairy Xingyue. What happened to the 3 demon realms, Qijing, Yuanfeng, and Bingqin? Why didn't any of the demon realms survive? How would I know? Fairy Xingyue replied unhappily. The Great Sage Hall forced me to close the star-picking tower. How would I know? Besides, it's just 3 demon realms. If they die, they die. Maybe it's the work of those heavenly kings in the Elysium world. The problem is that 5 temples in the Western Paradise were also destroyed. Suji asked. And these 5 temples covered a radius of nearly 1,000,000 miles. Whether it was the heavenly kings guarding the temple or the Buddhas in the temple, even the good men and women around the temple, they all disappeared. Don't you think there's something fishy about this? Of course I know. Fairy Xingyue replied unhappily. But these are the 3 continents, not the star field of the immortal realm. They are not under my control. Besides, even if I wanted to, I don't have the time. The Star Moon Palace is about to appear. Returning to the immortal realm is our biggest problem. That's true. Suji nodded. We don't have time. At this point, Suji intentionally or unintentionally looked at Xiao Hua and said, But other people have the time. Fairy Xingyue raised her eyebrows and said coldly, Suji, what do you mean? I worked hard to create Xingyue. I don't want to give it to a little money grubber. Xiao Hua, even if it's you, don't even think about taking Xingyue. When Suji heard this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Previously, when she saw that Xiao Hua had some potential, Fairy Xingyue fought to give Xiao Hua some benefits. However, when it came to giving Xiao Hua something that belonged to Fairy Xingyue was stingy. He really didn't understand what Fairy Xingyue was thinking. Chapter 4469. However, Fairy Xingyue's subsequent words immediately enlightened Suji. Don't think I don't know what he's thinking. Fairy Xingyue snorted coldly. Didn't he support the monster clan to establish the continuous merchant union to compete with Xingyu? I'd like to see how his continuous merchant union can develop to the same scale as my star moon. Then, Fairy Xingyue looked at Suji and said, Could it be, you know that his continuous merchant union is just a child's play? At this point, you're encouraging him to pick the peaches? Forget it. Suji waved his hand and said, Just pretend I didn't say anything. Then, Suji looked at Xiao Hua and asked, By the way, why did that rainbow seashell make things difficult for you? She doesn't seem to be a monster clan member of the 1,000 Monsters Sacred Realm, right? She's very powerful. Even I don't want to provoke her. How did you get out of trouble? This. Xiao Hua habitually touched his nose before lying and was about to speak. Fairy Xingyue saw it at a glance and shouted, He's going to lie again. When you met me earlier, you told me a lot about Bai Qingyu, but in the end, you still lied a lot. Elder sister, when did I lie to you? Xiao Hua had to remove his hand from his nose and said, If I say some things in front of you, wouldn't I be showing off? Besides, there's nothing to say when dealing with a few monster kings. My fortune gate is far inferior to Xingyu's, so I don't dare to say more. That's more like it. Fairy Xingyue snorted coldly and didn't seem to be angry anymore. She shouted, Tell me, how did you get rid of that female seashell? I met her back then. Her seashell was too strong, so I didn't have a good way to get rid of it. Actually, it's nothing. Since Xiao Hua had already decided to lie, he had already picked up the brush in his mouth and said with a smile, I have some connections with this rainbow seashell called Baixian. Didn't I tell you earlier? Junior wasn't born in the 3 continents, but in the Dawn Rain continent. Junior's sect is called Shanghuaming. Then, Xiaohua briefly described the battle between him and Bei Xian. He didn't talk about the divine punishment, he talked a lot about the feelings of kinship. In the end, he even embellished the matter between Little White Dragon and Bibbo, making Bei Xian look like an old woman looking for a relative. When she found Xiaohua, the disciple of her deceased relative, she was moved by Xiaohua's righteousness and was even more shocked by the love between Bibbo and Little White Dragon. She pardoned Xiaohua's crime of killing by Qingyu's hundreds of thousands of demons and even bestowed by Qingyu to Xiaohua as a thank you gift for finding the seven-colored conch. Then, she took Little White Dragon and Bibbo away and wanted to nurture them well. After Xiaohua finished telling the happy ending, he took a spirit fruit and put it in his mouth. In the end, Bei Xian took the two descendants who had a lot to do with her and returned to her cave residence to live a happy life. Is that all? After listening to Xiaohua, who looked at her innocently, Fairy Xingyue was stunned. She asked curiously, You didn't do anything. She let you go? Yes. Xiaohua was also a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water. He nodded and said, I've always convinced people with reason. Besides, I even brought her brother here. What else could she do? Yes, that's true. If it weren't for you, Bei Xian definitely wouldn't have been able to see her brother. Suji didn't know if he really believed it or if he was faking it. He nodded and praised. She should be thanking you. She was the one who caused all of this, so it's a happy ending for all of us to be happy. Xiaohua smiled. He didn't believe that Bei Xian's big seven-colored halo shell world would be known by others. He also didn't believe that Bei Xian would tell others what happened inside. Moreover, Suji and Fairy Xingyue obviously wouldn't have the chance to see Bei Xian again. He wasn't worried about being exposed at all. I don't believe that things will end so simply. Fairy Xingyue shook her head and said, That seven-colored seashell isn't an easy person to get along with. You killed so many demons. How could she let you go so easily? That's impossible. Upon hearing Fairy Xingyue's words, Xiaohua understood. Although Fairy Xingyu was meticulous, she was not from the royal family and did not know the dangers of the royal family. Therefore, it was impossible for her to consider things from Bei Xian's point of view and think of the reason why Bei Xian had taken action. Therefore, Xiaohua smiled and said, If they continue to fight, both sides will suffer. And Fairy Xingyue, do you think she will care about those juniors who are separated by who knows how many generations? Instead of offending a human clan Mahayana realm expert, it's better to take advantage of the situation and turn a bad thing into a good thing. After all these twists and turns were caused by her own actions, right? Suji ignored them and frowned. Xingyue, where is this so-called Red Sea domain? Why don't I have any impression of it? Fairy Xingyue glared at Xiaohua. She knew that Xiaohua wouldn't say much, but she couldn't find any clues. Fairy Xingyue said to Suji, Bei Xian is from the Sea Clan. Her so-called Red Sea domain should be in the demon realm. How could you know? Even I. This is the first time I've heard of it. Why is the three continents so chaotic? Suji smiled bitterly. I always thought that this Bei Xian was from the demon realm, but I didn't expect her to be from another high-level world like us. From what Xiaohua said, I can't tell whether this Red Sea domain is from the upper realm or not. Fairy Xingyue shook her head slightly. However, from Bei Xian's strength, the Red Sea domain is not much different from the demon realm. I'll check it carefully when I return to the Palace of Justice. Seniors, Xiaohua smiled and said, This junior will go for a walk and see my old friends. Seniors, let's discuss the matter of returning to the immortal realm. Go ahead. Suji nodded. However, just as Xiaohua walked out of the hall, Fairy Xingyue's voice sounded again. Xiaohua, don't seduce the star-picking house master of Xingyue. Xiaohua staggered and turned around helplessly. Elder sister, your Xingyue is not the Yihong brothel. Do you think this junior is interested in seducing them? Hee. Fairy Xingyue covered her mouth and laughed. She secretly glanced at Suji. Fortunately, Suji seemed to be thinking about something and frowned. He did not pay attention to what Fairy Xingyue said. The outside of the hall was empty, with only bare stone walls. There was no one around, and there was no exit. Xiaohua released his divine sense, scanned the area, and walked towards a certain direction. Sure enough, when Xiaohua arrived in front of the stone wall, a ripple appeared on the stone wall, and a moon gate appeared. Xiaohua floated past the moon gate, and a ripple swept across the jade pendant in front of his chest. Outside the moon gate was the pavilion that Xiaohua had seen outside the star-picking house. Layers of beautiful halos slowly flowed between the pavilions, and an unconcealable coldness emanated from the halos. This coldness not only spread outside the star-picking house, but also seeped into the bottom of the star-picking house. Restrictions that looked similar to defensive formations were born in this coldness. Xiaohua walked to the edge of the pavilion and looked outside the star-picking house. In just a moment, it was already snowing outside. The snowflakes were beautiful, and when the brilliance of the star-picking house fell on them, they reflected a variety of colors. Xiaohua felt a sense of contentment even without the company of a beautiful woman. Of course, this feeling of contentment only lasted for a moment. Xiaohua lifted his gaze and looked towards the horizon covered by dark clouds. He said in a low voice, "Mother, has there ever been snow in Guozhuang?" Naturally, no one answered Xiaohua's whisper. He looked for a moment and turned his head again. There was a flight of stairs in front of him that led to the next floor. Xiaohua thought for a moment and walked over. However, just as he walked down the stairs, he saw Zhu Qing standing there respectfully, holding something that looked like a book. "Fellow Taoist Zhu?" Seeing Zhu Qing standing there, Xiaohua hurried over and said with a smile, "It's really been a long time." "Senior." How could Zhu Qing dare to let Xiaohua call him fellow Taoist? He hurriedly replied, "It's enough for you to call this junior Zhu Qing. This junior doesn't dare to talk to senior as an equal." "Hee, there's no need to be like this," Xiaohua said with a smile. "We are old friends, and we had a good chat in the Bronze Pillar country. You don't care about this?" Senior is wrong. Etiquette is the foundation of why our human race is stronger than the demon race. If this junior doesn't respect etiquette, law, and etiquette, how is this different from the demon race? I remember that this junior also said at the star-picking house in the Bronze Pillar country that Taoism pursues the heavenly Tao and wants to roam the firmament with their own bodies. Confucian cultivators also pursue the heavenly Tao. However, Confucian cultivators believe that the heavenly Tao is the human path. Experiencing the world of mortals will naturally temper the heavenly Tao in their hearts. The heavenly Tao is either Tao, or law, or reason. If this junior can't even abide by this etiquette, how can this junior comprehend the will of the heavens and the hearts of the people? Xiaohua was a bit embarrassed. He nodded and said, that's right. You said this on the ferry under the Rainbow Bridge that day. This Xiao still remembers it." "It's good that senior remembers it." Zhu Qing had a respectful smile on his face. He handed over the book in his hand and said, "This junior remembers that senior once said that you wanted to finish writing the Book of Heroes in the star-picking house. This junior held senior's words in high esteem that day. This junior also believed that senior could realize that dream. However, what this junior didn't expect was that in just 200 years, senior had already risen from biographies to this era. Although senior's deeds aren't enough to finish writing the entire of this era, this junior knows that it won't be long before senior will have his own Book of Heroes." In the face of Zhu Qing's respect, Xiaohua's interest was somewhat dampened. However, after some thought, he understood Zhu Qing's difficulties. Zhu Qing was only a Confucian cultivator at the beginning of the 5th grade of Essence Force. He was a human Mahayana cultivator. Even the palace master of the Star Moon Palace treated him as an equal. How could Zhu Qing, the tower master of the star-picking house, dare to address him as a brother? Of course, Zhu Qing wasn't that kind of person. Of course, he wouldn't do anything that crossed the line. Why should he make things difficult for him? Thus, Xiaohua smiled and took the book. He said, "Zhu Qing, back then you told this old man that the Book of Heroes in the star-picking house isn't a book. Why is this book fooling this old man today?" Chapter 4470. Hearing Xiaohua refer to himself as an old man, Zhu Qing immediately relaxed. He smiled and said, "Senior will know when you take a look." Yes. As Xiaohua spoke, his gaze landed on the book. He saw that the book was rough to the touch, similar to an ordinary book. There were even layers of paper-like imprints on the side of the book. But when he actually flipped it open, Xiaohua discovered that the book was completely made of jade. Senior, use the eye-clearing technique. Minister Zhu immediately reminded as Xiaohua flipped through the book. All right. As Xiaohua spoke, a faint green light appeared in his eyes. Under the light of his clear eyes, the jade began to glow. A book with a golden base and jade words appeared. And on the cover of this book, there were 2 lines of big words, which were respectively, Hero Book, Xiaohua's Chronicle. This era? Xiaohua laughed involuntarily. This old man remembers that this record is the emperor's biography. Because the emperor is the highest leader who manages the country's affairs, he wrote a record for them and called it this record. It's precisely because this record shows where the world's origin lies, so that the officials and the people all have a certain degree of discipline in their actions. On the other hand, aristocratic families recorded the affairs of the vassal kingdoms. This was because the vassals established the Cheng family, and their descendants were hereditary. Thus, their biographies were called aristocratic families. Biographies recorded all kinds of historical figures other than emperors and dukes. At best, this old man can be considered a biography. How did I become a chronicle? Senior, you don't know. Zhu Qing said respectfully. Zhaixing Lu's Book of Heroes is different from that of ordinary Confucian cultivators. The emperors and generals of the secular world are not included in the Book of Heroes. If their cultivation was profound, and they had made great contributions to the hidden immortal continent, they might be listed in the biographies. The epoch in the Book of Heroes of Zhaixing Lu is specially prepared for the supreme cultivators of the hidden immortal continent. For example, the chronicles of immortal Emperor Go Chen, Vairocana Rulai, Golden-Winged Pang Grand Sage, and Octagonal Pentaceratops Grand Sage. Each of these chronicles recorded the achievements of immortal emperors, Vairocana Rulai World Sovereign, and Golden-Winged Pang Grand Sage. Aside from the chronology, the noble clans of Zhaixing Lu are also different from the noble clans of ordinary Confucian cultivators. They record the noble clans of the 100 schools of thought, such as the Dongfang noble clan, the Shiman noble clan, the Nangong noble clan, the Dark North noble clan, etc. It records the history and deeds of these noble clans. The so-called biographies recorded the deeds of other cultivators besides the current era and the aristocratic families. There were many records in this biographies. There were Confucian cultivators, Buddhist sects, Taoist sects, and demons. It was the true Book of Heroes of Zhaixing Lu. Senior was previously listed in the biographies, which should be the biographies of Xiaohua. However, just a few days ago, Senior shocked the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, and your name spread far and wide. The Book of Heroes that recorded Senior's deeds was also changed to the Chronicles of Xiaohua. This junior was fortunate enough to be the first person to create a biography for Senior. This Chronicles of Xiaohua was also personally created by this junior. Thank you, thank you. Xiaohua looks at the respectful Zhu Qing and says with emotion, I didn't think that the joke this old man made that day would actually come true today. Thank you for your hard work. I don't dare. It is this junior's honor to be able to write this Chronicles for Senior. The pride on Zhu Qing's face doesn't seem to be fake, and he answers very happily. Xiaohua slightly nods and looks at the big words on the jade. However, the Chronicles of Xiaohua still has 4 words, and he doesn't see what's inside. Xiaohua asks curiously, Zhu Qing, how do you see what's inside? Senior. Zhu Qing says with a smile, Zhaixing Lu's Book of Heroes records the deeds of various heroes. Some are secret, and without a certain level of authority, you can't see them. This junior can only see a part of Senior's chronicles. Didn't Palace Lord give Senior a jade pendant? Senior can just put the jade pendant on the Book of Heroes. Okay. Xiaohua responds and puts the jade pendant on the Book of Heroes. Indeed, starlight appears on the jade pendant. In the starlight, the Book of Heroes starts to move by itself, page by page. Since it's his own chronicles, Xiaohua originally wanted to read 10 lines at a glance. However, just as he reads the first page, he sees the first sentence. Xiaohua of Dao Sect, origin unknown, first appeared in Yu Province's Longevity Town, only 3rd grade of elemental force. And next to this sentence is another line of small words. Suspicious. Origin of other realm. Name of realm unknown. Hiss. Xiao Hua inhales a breath of cold air and hurriedly continues to flip. Sure enough, at the place where Ci Heng appeared, there are 2 lines of small words. Suspicious. This Ci Heng might be Xiao Hua in disguise, because the timing of Xiao Hua's coma is really too coincidental. However, Xiao Hua has never revealed his Buddhist cultivation, so it's impossible to confirm. Suspicious. There is a Ci Heng in Single Yang country. The name and appearance are all the same, but that day, Ci Heng didn't leave Single Yang country, so Ci Heng might have escaped detection. His granny. Xiao Hua's expression changed slightly. He raised his head and looked at Zhu Qing. Zhu Qing didn't show any surprise and said with a smile, Senior, this junior can only see a few places, but this junior knows. There might be many places that senior can't think of. People often say, if you don't want others to know, don't do it in the first place. Many times, things that we think are undetectable are actually not hidden at all. AI, that's right. Xiao Hua also shook his head and continued to read. The more he read, the more shocked he became. There were actually many secrets that he didn't want others to know. But fortunately, Xiao Hua didn't care about the secrets recorded in the Book of Heroes. When Xiao Hua flipped to the last page, he saw the record. Fortune Gate's 200,000 disciples massacred by Qingyu, then led the troops to Heaven-Concealing Ridge and Ancient Bell Mountain. In this battle, the Fortune Gate ascended the battle stage of the 3 mainlands' struggle for hegemony. Xiao Hua is qualified to be listed in this chronicles. Behind this was another line of slightly lighter handwriting. Suspicious. These 200,000 disciples are Xiao Hua's iron army in the Kunlun immortal realm. Fortunately, Xiao Hua saw this and let out a long sigh. This Xiao's biggest secret has yet to be revealed. Moreover, the secret of these clones has yet to be discovered. Granny, this star moon is too powerful. If this Xiao can obtain it in his hands. Of course, this thought flashed through Xiao Hua's mind. Since Fairy Xingyu had already warned Xiao Hua not to covet it, Xiao Hua definitely wouldn't go and provoke a true fairy from the immortal realm. Xiao Hua closed the chronicles of Xiao Hua in his hand and asked with a smile, Zhu Qing, is there any other book of heroes in this star-plucking tower? Reporting to Senior. Zhu Qing carefully received the Book of Heroes and respectfully said, all of Star Moon's books of heroes are placed in the Moon-Embracing Palace. Normally, only a few copies are placed in various star-plucking towers. Because Senior recently appeared in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, Senior's Book of Heroes was sent to the Star-Plucking Tower here. Of course, the Star-Plucking Tower in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm has been closed recently, and the other Star-Plucking Tower's books of heroes were also sent here. However, these books of heroes are mostly chronicles and biographies of the demons. If Senior is interested, you can head to the Hall of Heroes to take a look. Moon-Embracing Palace? Xiao Hua was stunned and asked curiously, what kind of place is the Moon-Embracing Palace? Senior, please no. Zhu Qing answered, the reason why Star Moon is called Star Moon is because the star refers to the Star-Plucking Tower, and the moon refers to the Moon-Embracing Palace. I'm sure Senior already knows what the Star-Plucking Tower is. The Moon-Embracing Palace is the palace where the Palace Lord resides. As for where the Moon-Embracing Palace is, I don't know either. Oh, I see. Xiao Hua smiled. Fairy Xingyu had told him so much, but she had never mentioned the Moon-Embracing Palace. Of course, she was wary of him. He asked again, the Hall of Heroes is in the Star-Plucking Tower, right? Yes. Zhu Qing nodded. Good. Xiao Hua said with a smile, Zhu Qing, if you have the time, can you bring me to the Hall of Heroes? Of course. Zhu Qing was very happy. I'm just about to return the Book of Heroes to the Hall of Heroes. Senior, please. The Hall of Heroes was on the floor where Zhu Qing was respectfully standing. In just a moment, Zhu Qing brought Xiao Hua to the Hall of Heroes. This was an extremely majestic-looking pavilion. Before they even reached the front, a murderous aura mixed with an overwhelming will hit them in the face. A kind of loneliness and desolation of being suddenly on the battlefield involuntarily arose. In the eyes, a bloody light rushed out from the pavilion. Bursts of war drums and the neighing of thousands of horses also surged in the surroundings like a hidden fragrance. Xiao Hua had been on the battlefield, so he was no stranger to this murderous aura that came out of nowhere. Zhu Qing shrunk his neck, as if it was somewhat unbearable. Zhu Qing. Xiao Hua keenly felt the change in Zhu Qing's true qi and said with a smile, "This place doesn't seem to be suitable for you. Give the Book of Heroes to me. I'll help you bring it in." "No need." Zhu Qing shook his head and said, "Returning the Book of Heroes is my duty. I can't let Senior do it for me." As he spoke, true qi surged around Zhu Qing's body. Thumb-sized clouds emerged from the surface of his body, protecting Zhu Qing as he stepped into the door of the pavilion. Clang. The sound of a sword rang out from above the pavilion. A flying sword flew out like a flying immortal from outer space, slashing towards the top of Zhu Qing's head. Xiao Hua scanned with his divine sense and immediately sensed Fairy Xing use thoughts from the sword intent. He understood that this was the prohibition of the Hall of Heroes. Sure enough, with a soft boom, a faint starlight rushed out from the top of Zhu Qing's head. The flying sword fell on the starlight and instantly turned into nothingness. Zhu Qing's figure disappeared from the pavilion. Xiao Hua had a jade pendant in front of his chest, so of course, he wouldn't care about this flying sword. When he stepped into the Hall of Heroes, he couldn't help but be stunned again. However, he saw that the Hall of Heroes was not a library like he had imagined. Instead, it was a space that resembled a starry sky. In the dreamlike night, the figures of the Yao clan adorned the starry sky. Not far from Xiao Hua, a lifelike statue of Xiao Hua flashed with golden light and stood there with a faint smile. Zhu Qing had placed the Book of Heroes in the hands of this statue. Next to Xiao Hua's statue, Feng Wu's demon body statue spread its wings, as if it was about to soar. Under Feng Wu's phoenix claws, there was also a Book of Heroes flashing with golden brilliance. Chapter 4471. Senior. Just as Xiao Hua was sizing it up, Zhu Qing put down the Book of Heroes, turned around, and said respectfully, "Junior can't stay in the Hall of Heroes for long. Senior can look around as you please. Junior will wait outside the Hall of Heroes." "Zhu Qing, you don't have to wait." Xiao Hua waved his hand and smiled. "I don't know when I'll go out, so you should rest early." "I don't dare," Zhu Qing said respectfully. "Senior doesn't know anyone else in the Stargazing Tower. Junior can't not wait on you." "All right then." Xiao Hua understood that even if he didn't agree, Zhu Qing would still wait outside. He nodded and flew to the Phoenix Parasol statue. Zhu Qing didn't dare to say anything and floated out of the Hall of Heroes. Xiao Hua was the only one left in the entire starry sky. Xiao Hua picked up the Book of Heroes on the Phoenix Parasol statue's claws. When he saw the cover, it was titled Heaven-Defying Thunder Phoenix Great Sage. He took a deep breath and opened it. When he saw what was written on it, he couldn't help but laugh. There was only one line written on it: Heaven-Defying Thunder Phoenix Great Sage. Origin unknown. 7 stars Great Sage. When he entered the Great Sage Hall, 10,000 stars greeted him. He guided 10,000 stars into the sun and bestowed the 1,000 demons with the power of 10,000 stars. He was supported by 10,000 demons, and the line next to it wrote, "Suspected, Phoenix clan descendant, born in the 10,000 demon realm." Not bad, not bad. This is the true heaven-defying Thunder Phoenix. Xiao Hua smiled and put the Book of Heroes back on the Phoenix Parasol statue's claws. He looked around again. Beside the Phoenix Parasol statue, there were naturally statues of the other 6 saints of the Great Sage Hall. However, these statues didn't have the Book of Heroes. Damn it. So Fairy Xingyu is also afraid of the Great Sage Hall coming to cause trouble. She doesn't dare to put the Great Sage Hall's Book of Heroes here. Xiao Hua curled his lips and cursed silently. Since she doesn't dare to put it here, why put these statues here? Xiao Hua was naturally most concerned about the secrets of the Great Sage Hall's Great Sage Hall. Without these secrets, Xiao Hua had lost interest in the hall. However, he still looked around and casually found some books of heroes to check. There were quite a few heroes albums in the Hall of Heroes. Even though Xiao Hua was aimless, he still looked at them for an hour. Seeing that there were more and more trivial matters in the heroes albums, Xiao Hua clapped his hands and prepared to leave. At this moment, he saw a statue of a demonic beast that was even larger than the golden-winged roc. He flew over and raised his hand to take out a palm-sized book of heroes from the mouth of the monster statue. Written on the book were the biographies of Qijing, Yuan Feng, Bing Qin, and Qi Hua. Xiao Hua understood that this was a compilation of the biographies of several demonic beast experts. When he opened the biographies and skimmed through them, he couldn't help but frown when he reached the end. At the end, it said, Qijing, Yuan Feng, and Bing Qin, the three demonic realms. All the demonic beasts were killed overnight. Qijing became an abyss, Yuan Feng became a wasteland, and Bing Qin became a barren ridge. There were no bloodstains, no corpses, and no traces. Everything turned into nothingness. The biographies of Qijing, Yuan Feng, and Bing Qin came to an end. Of course, there was a small line of words next to the end. Hiss. Xiao Hua took a deep breath and thought of what Fairy Xingyu and Suji had said when he left the top floor of Zhai Xinglu. He hurriedly looked in another direction, where the hero's album of the Buddhist sect was recorded. However, the Buddhist sect was different from the 1,000 demonic sacred realm. They were temples of different styles. Xiao Hua couldn't find the 5 temples that Fairy Xingyu didn't mention. However, when Xiao Hua looked at the shining Qijing statue, he had some understanding in his heart. His divine sense swept through the temple, and he also found 5 temples with dark colors. Xiao Hua flew to one of the temples and saw a hero's album in front of the mountain gate of the temple. On it was written, Aristocratic Family of Qingzhou Temple. Qingzhou Temple is Qingzhou Temple. It's really weird to make it an aristocratic family. Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If the Mahavairakana revered Buddha knew about this, wouldn't he be mad? Oh, there's no need to look at this aristocratic family of Qingzhou Temple. Just looking at Mahavairakana revered Buddha will make him go crazy. Immediately Xiao Hua opened this book of aristocratic families to take a look. He saw that on the first page of the Book of Heroes, it was recorded, Qingzhou Temple was built in. It was built in the 73rd year of the calendar by begging alms from the school of law Qingzhou Luohan. The following pages of the Book of Heroes recorded the many good deeds and evil deeds of Qingzhou Temple in full detail. Next to every paragraph there was also a comment of doubt, and at the end, just like what Xiao Hua saw earlier, it said, Qingzhou Temple had 1 protector heavenly king, 3 venerable masters, 4,213 Buddha sons, and more than 7,610,000 ordinary people within 100,360 li radius. In one night they all disappeared without a sound of warning, without a single scream, without a single drop of blood left behind, and without a single piece of bone left behind. The Buddhist formations, Buddhist weapons, pagodas, and other things in Qingzhou Temple also disappeared without a trace. The remark on the other side was also suspicious. How strange. Xiao Hua's heart tightened when he saw the disappearance of 7 million people. He took a closer look and still couldn't find any clues. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Then, Xiao Hua looked at the records of the other 4 temples. They were more or less the same as Qingzhou Temple. He couldn't find any clues at all. Xiao Hua placed the hero's album he had read in front of the mountain gate. He had a slight understanding in his heart. He pondered and said, I'm thinking too much. There are countless humans and demons in this world. Countless things happen at every moment. Who knows how much karma is involved in these things? If I want to understand all these things and karma, even if I have the exquisite 7 orifices heart, I won't be able to do it. Just like when I went to Bai Qingyu. I first met that great demon on the snowy mountain. If I'm not wrong, that great demon is related to Bai Qingyu's demon king, Bai Qing. I learned from that great demon that Bai Qingyu covets me. Then, I went to the southern sea dragon palace and learned from the dragon kings of the 4 seas that the little white dragon might be suppressed. Then, I met Shui Mingzi and the others. Only then did I know Bai Qingyu's exact location and why they wanted to save me, as well as their respective plans. Of course, at the same time, Zhai Xingzi, Xiong Yi, Ying Pia, and the others were also preparing to save me. Bai Qingyu, Gu Zhongshan, and Canopy Ridge were also scheming against me. Everything was happening, and I was only trapped in a corner. I didn't know about the schemes and sacrifices. Only when I went to Bai Qingyu and saw Qingbu's banquet did I understand the whole story. However, the whole story was still a show. Only when Bei Xian made a move did I see the real mastermind behind the scenes. And the mastermind's motive is bitter and pitiful. That's right, Juxia is right. Everything in the world that is complicated and enigmatic is indeed a beautiful scenery, but this scenery is nothing but nothingness. Only the source and the truth behind the complicated and enigmatic things are eternal beauty. Xiao Hua instantly thought of that world-toppling beauty again. That face was truly refined. It was the first time Xiao Hua had seen such a face in his life. Unless I can break away from these karma and jump out of the 5 elements, I'll be able to see the truth of the world. Xiao Hua instantly had another realization. Cryptic waves flashed around his body. He was delighted and didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly sat cross-legged in the Hall of Heroes. That cryptic wave emitted from his body and landed on every book of heroes. Every time it passed by a book of heroes, thousands of inscriptions would fly out from the book of heroes and swarm into the wave. Furthermore, every inscription would turn into a stroke and disappear. Looking at Xiao Hua's figure again, it was also swaying like light and shadow as the inscriptions entered. Every time it swayed, his figure would change a little. When the wave enveloped the entire Hall of Heroes, Xiao Hua's figure had already turned into a karma hand. Swoosh! The wave immediately reverberated when it touched the stone wall of the Hall of Heroes. The karma hand formed by Xiao Hua produced thousands of thin threads and fell into the thousands of sculptures one by one. The strokes that had previously fallen into the wave turned into a trickle and flowed into the karma hand along with the karma threads. In just a few breaths, the reverberating wave collided with the karma hand again. The wave was like a surging wave. Strange scenes of light and shadow flashed in this wave. At the same time, the wave spread out in all directions with the karma hand as the center. It rushed through the restriction of the Hall of Heroes and fell into the entire Zhai Xinglu. On the top floor of Zhai Xinglu, Fairy Xingyu and Suji seemed to be talking about something. The water-blue thunder mark between Suji's eyebrows suddenly flashed. Suji was shocked. Just as he was about to get up, the wave of the karma wave had already wrapped around Suji. Suji seemed to be imprisoned. Both his figure and expression were frozen in place. It was the same for Fairy Xingyu, who was opposite Suji. Her bare ankles flashed with a pure white luster and were slightly raised. The fluorescence from her toenails that were smeared with starlight also froze in midair. If the two immortals were controlled by the wave of karma, how could the other humans in Zhai Xinglu be spared? The entire Zhai Xinglu turned into a solidified light and shadow in the river of karma. Both time and space were still. Waves of karma surged out from the karma hand. The threads of karma were born from the thousands of sculptures. Through the records, they surged to various parts of the 1,000-demon sacred realm. It was unknown how long it took. Time was not the only and absolute thing in the river of karma. The area affected by the river of karma was also unknown. However, in the stillness of everything, the thunder mark between Suji's eyebrows flashed again. Swoosh! A spear-like object flew out of the thunder mark. As soon as it appeared, an extremely obscure wave fell into the river of karma. Kacha! A crack appeared where the ripple was. The stillness of the 1,000 demons' sacred realm in Zhai Xinglu was shattered. At the same time, the seemingly endless river of karma was also cut off. However, it disappeared in an instant. Chapter 4472. It was only then that Suji finished speaking. He stood up abruptly and looked at the Hall of Heroes. Fairy Xingyu lowered her raised ankle. She looked at Suji in surprise and asked, "What's wrong?" "I don't know." Suji's eyes flashed with lightning. He said hesitantly, "I have a strange feeling, as if someone is spying on us." Fairy Xingyu used her divine thought to check. After a moment, she shook her head and said, "That's impossible. Is there anyone in this world who can escape the detection of our divine ability?" "My punishment fairy weapon has been activated." Suji suddenly touched the thunder mark that had disappeared with his finger and shouted, "There's definitely something unusual. Otherwise, I would have known when the punishment fairy weapon was activated. Moreover, What on the 3 continents is worth the punishment fairy weapon activating itself? Suji pointed in the direction of the Hall of Heroes and asked, that place is in that direction? There? Fairy Xing Yu was puzzled. Below is the Hall of Heroes. Below that is the Hall of Heroes. Below that is the auction hall. Suji's figure swayed. Quick, the Hall of Heroes. Damn it. How could Fairy Xing Yu not know what had happened? She said angrily. Could it be that the 7-star great saint sneaked into the Hall of Heroes? The two ignored the restriction of the Hall of Heroes, crossed the space, and landed in the Hall of Heroes. Ripples flashed in a space in the Hall of Heroes. Amidst the lightning and starlight, Fairy Xing Yu and Suji appeared. When the two of them saw everything in the Hall of Heroes, they were surprised again. Fairy Xing Yu shouted, Xiaohua? You. Why are you in the Hall of Heroes? Huh. At this time, Xiaohua had just placed the hero book of the last temple in front of the statue's mountain gate and was about to turn around and leave. Hearing Fairy Xing Yu's exclamation, Xiaohua was stunned. He turned around and asked curiously, Seniors, why did you suddenly appear? Is there something important? Are you the only one in the Hall of Heroes? Suji asked hurriedly. Xiaohua nodded and said, Yes, it's me. Previously, this junior. Xiaohua was about to explain, but Suji wasn't interested in listening at all. His gaze swept across the entire Hall of Heroes like lightning, and his figure once again flashed with lightning and disappeared. It's fine, it's fine. When Fairy Xing Yu saw Suji heading to the assembly hall, she waved her hand at Xiaohua and said, Do whatever you want. After saying that, Fairy Xing Yu also disappeared. I'm fine with anything. Xiaohua helplessly scratched his head and thought to himself, although there are many Book of Heroes in this Hall of Heroes, it is still limited. The hand of cause and effect that I have comprehended has only been comprehended once in all the Book of Heroes. If you don't mind, then tell this Xiao where the moon-embracing palace is. Xiaohua finished thinking. Just as he was about to take a step forward, he was startled again. Io, not good. I just realized, did I disturb the two immortals? It seemed like a long time had passed. If not 100 years, then at least 1,000 years, right? Xiaohua hurriedly came out from the Hall of Heroes. Sure enough, Minister Zhu was still standing respectfully in the distance. Xiaohua hurriedly asked, Minister Zhu, how long have I been inside the Hall of Heroes? How long? Minister Zhu didn't quite understand, but he still answered honestly, Senior. You have been in the Hall of Heroes for the time it takes to burn an incense stick. Oh, that's good. Xiaohua felt relieved. Just as he was about to speak, Minister Zhu said again, Senior, if you have the time, can you? Without waiting for Minister Zhu to finish speaking, his figure paused. It was obvious that he was listening attentively. After a few breaths, Minister Zhu respectfully saluted somewhere and said, This subordinate understands. Then, Minister Zhu saluted Xiaohua again and said, Senior, there are some urgent matters at Jiaxing Lu. This junior can't accompany you. Senior can go to the top floor to rest or walk around as you wish. After this junior is done, I will come to find you. All right, you can go now. Xiaohua was originally excited to chat with Minister Zhu, but seeing Minister Zhu's unusually respectful manner, he was already a little tired. Seeing that he had something to do, he waved his hand and let him go. This junior will take his leave. Minister Zhu still saluted very politely and quickly left. Alas, etiquette is naturally necessary, but if you take etiquette too seriously, then it's meaningless. This Xiao originally wanted to have a good chat with you. Why is this Xiao still interested now? Xiaohua looked at Minister Zhu's back and understood in his heart that he had only met Minister Zhu once. He wasn't even as familiar as Princess Baihua. It was normal for him to be respectful to him. What happened at Jiaxing Lu? Xiaohua, the main culprit, didn't have the slightest awareness. He smacked his lips and said, With two immortals here, who dares to be rash? This Xiao had better walk around casually. Perhaps I can find some cheap things? After walking a few steps, Xiaohua stopped again and laughed even more involuntarily. Damn it, with this Zhao's realm, where can I go to pick up cheap things? Even if there are cheap things, this Xiao would be embarrassed to reach out with my cultivation. As he spoke, Xiaohua's body fluctuated, and his Mahayana cultivation realm slowly fell. It only stabilized when it fell to the upper fourth level of origin power. Xiao Hua sized it up and nodded, saying, "This realm is suitable for this Xiao after 200 years. Anyway, even Fairy Xingyu and Suji didn't know what happened to Bai Qingyu. Those human cultivators of Zhai Xinglu probably only cared about entering Star Moon Palace and wouldn't know about Bai Qingyu's matter like those tower lords of Zhai Xinglu, right? Otherwise, this Xiao will have to change his appearance." Xiao Hua finished his preparations and raised his head to look in the direction that Zhu Qing had left. There was a flight of stairs there. Xiao Hua walked over and walked down the stairs. There was no movement on the next few floors. Clearly, these were the pavilions that Zhai Xinglu used for their own purposes. Xiao Hua wasn't in a hurry. He just walked down the stairs. After half a cup of tea's time, he saw a faint restriction fluctuation, and a burst of noisy aura came from below the pavilion. Xiao Hua smiled as if he saw a large pile of good-quality spirit grasses appear in front of him. However, just as he turned around the stairs and saw the situation in front of him, Xiao Hua was a little disappointed. This was a huge hall that was thousands of feet wide, and there were many cultivators clustered inside. These cultivators were either Confucian cultivators or Taoist cultivators. There were even some bald monks. In a large corner of the hall, there were actually more than 10 demons sitting together. However, there were no spiritual herbs and the like that Xiao Hua was hoping to see. Oh, looks like these cultivators and the Yao clan should be the candidates to head to the Star Moon Palace. Xiao Hua looked at the cultivators with varying levels of strength and understood. Then, he didn't plan to stop and continued walking down. However, at this moment, a slightly excited voice called out, "Xiao, Senior Xiao?" Xiao Hua was taken aback. He raised his head and looked over, only to see that not far away from him, there were a dozen or so scholars in scholarly attire. These scholars were either holding folding fans in their hands or holding wine cups in their hands. They were talking loudly and giving pointers. A Confucian cultivator with a slightly aged face was looking at him. That Confucian cultivator's pair of thick and long eyebrows were very eye-catching. "Mr. Mo Jianli?" Xiao Hua looked at this unfamiliar face and immediately remembered. Wasn't this the Confucian cultivator Mo Jianli that he met in Longevity Town in Country Shi? That day, he and Mo Jianli had fought against the water monsters of Liao River and had a fierce battle with Jiang Sheng of Dongtian River. He didn't expect to meet him in Thousand Demons' sacred territories, star-picking tower hundreds of years later. "Yes, it's me." Seeing that Xiao Hua recognized him, Mo Jianli hurriedly got up and walked quickly to Xiao Hua. He bowed and said, "It's been many years since we parted in Longevity Town. I really didn't expect to meet you in Thousand Demons' sacred territories star-picking tower." Mo Jianli was one of the first Confucian cultivators that Xiao Hua met after coming to hidden Immortal Mainland. This Mo Jianli cultivated the noble spirit river and used the righteous qi of heaven and earth to temper his heart. His character and temper were very much to Xiao Hua's liking. It was a pity that after Xiao Hua left Longevity Town, he didn't have the time to go to Country Shi. Although Mo Jianli had sent Xiao Hua Jedi message, Xiao Hua didn't have the time to go to Chongyan Sect to visit Mo Jianli. Xiao Hua's surprise was the same as Mo Jianli's. He hurriedly helped Mo Jianli up and asked curiously, "Mr. Mo, why are you at Star Picking Tower?" "Oh, I understand. You're also qualified to go to Star Moon Palace. Congratulations." Entering the Star Moon Palace was originally a joyous occasion. Xiao Hua did not even think before he opened his mouth to congratulate Mo Jianli. However, when these words reached Mo Jianli's ears, a layer of red actually appeared on his face, as if he was very ashamed. Seeing this, Xiao Hua was a little confused. Mo Jianli's eyes flickered. He followed Xiao Hua's tone and asked, "Could it be that you're also going to Star Moon Palace?" "Yes, of course I'm going to Star Moon Palace. My purpose is the same as yours." Xiao Hua didn't hide it and said casually, "Mr. Mo, you and I are old friends. We've even experienced life and death together. There's no need to call me senior. Call me Xiao Hua or fellow immortal." This isn't too appropriate. At first, Mo Jianli called Xiao Hua fellow immortal. However, after Xiao Hua's battle with Jiang Sheng, Mo Jianli felt that Xiao Hua's strength surpassed his and that he was a hidden expert. Therefore, when he sent Xiao Hua off, He called him senior instead. Now, it had been close to 300 years. Mo Jinli had already cultivated from a scholar who cultivated energy into chi to a scholar who cultivated chi into spirit. He wasn't far from becoming a grandmaster. Among his peers, his cultivation speed was considered fast. However, when he looked at Xiaohua now, he still felt that Xiaohua was stronger than him. How could he call Xiaohua fellow immortal? There's nothing inappropriate. Xiaohua smiled and said, "Why don't I turn around and leave?" Haha, then we'll do as you say. Mo Jinli had always been carefree. When he heard Xiaohua's words, he smiled and said, Come, fellow immortal Xiao, let me introduce you to a few old friends. Chapter 4473. As he spoke, Mo Jinli's face was filled with excitement. He pulled Xiaohua's sleeve and walked to the group of Confucian scholars where he was before. He shouted in a slightly loud voice, "Fellow immortals, let me introduce you. These are the Taoist friends I made in the immortal town 300 years ago. His name is Xiaohua. He is a cultivator who cares about the people. We fought against the water tribe of Liao River together." "I remember now. Brother Mo, this is the Taoist cultivator with boundless strength that you were talking about." A martial cultivator with a slightly burly figure suddenly came to a realization. He hurriedly cupped his hands and bowed. "I'm Pu Qing. Greetings, fellow immortal Xiao." Thank you. Xiao Hua returned the greeting. "Greetings, Xiao Hua." Then, a few Confucian cultivators near Mo Jinli greeted Xiao Hua politely. Although they were not as close as Pu Qing, they were still polite. When it was the turn of a Confucian cultivator with a white face and no beard, Mo Jinli's face froze. He looked a little unnatural, but he only hesitated a little, then said to Xiao Hua with a smile, "Fellow immortal Xiao, this is Gongshu Minghu from the Gongshu family. He is less than 2,000 years old, but he is a master of the 5th level. He is a rare master among us." Mo Jinli was not flattering Xiao Hua, but it sounded like he was flattering Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua did not understand why, but he still smiled and was about to say something. At this time, Mo Jinli said to Gongshu Minghu, "Senior Gongshu, this is my good friend, Xiao Hua. He is a Taoist cultivator with a good character. His future is limitless. You should get to know each other better." Gongshu Minghu had originally been whispering to a Confucian cultivator beside him, ignoring Mo Jinli's introduction. However, when he heard Mo Jinli's slightly exaggerated introduction, a smile appeared on his face. He had originally wanted to say a few words of encouragement, but when he heard Mo Jinli's last few words, his face changed. He looked at Xiao Hua and said coldly, "I don't like Taoist cultivators. There is no need to talk about helping, let alone getting to know each other better. As for good character, it sounds ridiculous. There are many people in the world with 2 legs, but there are not many Taoist cultivators with a heart." Mo Jinli's face turned pale as he gritted his teeth. Gongshu Minghu didn't care about Mo Jinli's expression. He turned his eyes from Xiao Hua to Mo Jinli and said seriously, "Mo Yin, you have to remember what happened to the Chongyan sect. Remember why you lost your home. Your Chongyan sect was doing well in the country of Shi. Why was it destroyed? Why were you expelled from the Chongyan sect? Wasn't it because of the Buddhist sect and the Taoist sect? You are already a literary master. Why don't you learn from your mistakes?" From Xiao Hua's point of view, this Gongshu Minghu definitely deserved to be taught a lesson. But from Mo Jinli's point of view, although Gongshu Minghu did not give him any face, he was still a Confucian senior after all. These words might sound unpleasant, but they were still the teachings of a senior. Mo Jinli gritted his teeth and finally lowered his head. "Yes, Senior Gongshu is right. Junior should have learned his lesson from being expelled from the sect, and from the tragedy of Chongyun's sect's destruction." "That's great." Gongshu Minghu nodded. He glanced at Xiao Hua and said, "Then in the future, don't hang out with these cultivators who don't know your background. They will ruin your reputation and bring shame to us Confucian cultivators." Xiao Hua didn't care about Gongshu Minghu's words. In his eyes, Gongshu Minghu was even less than an ant. He just frowned and looked at Mo Jinli, thinking about what Gongshu Minghu just said. Then, Mo Jinli slightly raised his head, looked at Gongshu Minghu and said word by word, Senior cares about Junior. Junior naturally has to thank Senior. However, Junior has the right to make friends with whoever he wants. Even if Junior's reputation is ruined, it is Junior's own business. Nobody can interfere. Besides, Junior doesn't think it is shameful to make friends with a Taoist cultivator who put his own life on the line and fought with the Water Tribe just to save the ordinary people of the Longevity Town. Junior also doesn't think Junior's actions will bring shame to Confucian cultivators. Junior is just a poor cultivator. I am far from Senior's arrogant identity and prominent position. Junior's actions can't be so good. Humph, the child can't be taught. Gongshu Minghu saw Mo Jianli ridiculing him. He sneered, flicked his sleeve and scolded, "Rotten wood can't be carved." With Gongshu Minghu's assertion, the few Confucian cultivators who were close to Mo Jianli before couldn't help but move away. Although Gongshu Minghu didn't leave, the dozen or so Confucian cultivators had already excluded Mo Jianli. Mo Jianli looked at the dozen or so Confucian cultivators who he hadn't introduced yet and sighed in his heart. "Fellow immortal Mo?" Xiao Hua's voice was light again. "Why were you expelled from the sect? How did Chongyan's sect get destroyed? What's the state of she now?" "Alas," Mo Jianli sighed. Looking at the invisible barrier between him and the other Confucian cultivators, he smiled bitterly and said, "Fellow immortal Xiao, it's a long story. Don't worry." Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Take your time, Gongshu Minghu." Just as Mo Jianli was about to speak, a clear voice came from the stairs. Xiao Hua was stunned and turned his head in disbelief. He saw two beautiful women with bright eyes and white teeth standing there with arrogance on their faces. Wasn't one of them Gongshu Yisin? Gongshu Minghu pulled away from Mo Jianli and was talking to the other Confucian cultivators with a trace of arrogance on his face. When he heard someone call his name, he turned his head impatiently. When he saw Gongshu Yisin and the other woman, his face immediately lit up. He almost ran to them and bowed. "Minghu greets your Auntie Xian and Auntie Ming. May I know why you called me Minghu?" Gongshu Yisin's face showed obvious disgust and disdain. She said coldly, "Gongshu Minghu, although your surname is Gongshu, you're from a side branch of the Gongshu family. You're not listed in the genealogy. You call me Aunt. Where did that come from? If you called me Aunt in private, then so be it. I won't argue with you. But you called me Aunt in public. Are you disregarding the genealogy of the Gongshu family? You don't care about your face, but I do. Don't ruin the reputation of the Gongshu family and embarrass the Gongshu family." Gongshu Minghu knew that Gongshu Yisin had always been arrogant and didn't put ordinary people in her eyes. But he didn't expect his words to cause so much trouble. However, Gongshu Minghu knew that although Gongshu Yisin's words were unpleasant, every word was correct. Even if he wanted to refute, he couldn't. Just like when he scolded Mo Jianli from the perspective of a senior Confucian cultivator, he stole a glance around. There were already Confucian cultivators snickering. His face was hot and red. "Sister Xian." The woman named Gongshu Yiming smiled and pulled Gongshu Yisin's sleeve. Although Minghu can't be listed in the genealogy, in terms of seniority, he is more than 1,000 years old. He should call you Aunt, a senior who is hundreds of years old. There was nothing wrong with what he said. Why do you have to be angry with that junior? Humph. Gongshu Yisin rolled her eyes at Gongshu Yiming and said to Gongshu Minghu, "I won't argue with you this time. Uncle Jingyi called you down for something." Hearing this, Gongshu Minghu felt relieved and hurriedly said with a smile, I know. Thank you, Aunt." Senior, however, just as he was about to take a step, Gongshu Yisin suddenly screamed. She looked behind her and cried out in surprise, "You!" Gongshu Minghu was shocked. He looked at Gongshu Yisin, who suddenly lost her composure and didn't know what happened. Looking at Gongshu Xian's eyes again, she stared at Gongshu Minghu's back. After a few breaths, her face flushed red. She seemed to be suppressing her inner excitement. She hurriedly said, "Zhenren Xiao, why are you here? Why didn't I see you enter Star Picking Tower?" "Xiao, Zhenren Xiao? Xiao, Senior?" Although Gongshu Minghu didn't turn around and didn't know if Xiao Hua was the senior Gongshu Yisin was talking about. But he was stunned because he knew that behind him were Mo Jianli and the others. Among the dozen or so Confucian cultivators, there was no one with the surname Xiao. And the special one, Zhenren Xiao, wasn't that the title of a Taoist cultivator? Sure enough, Xiaohua's voice sounded faintly. So it's Miss Eason. I haven't seen you for hundreds of years. How have you been? I'm naturally well. Gongshu Eason's arrogance had long disappeared, facing this Xiao Hua who was only 600 years old. But his Taoist cultivation and formation skills were far higher than her. She really didn't have the right to be proud. And the question of whether he was only 400 years old also gave birth to a knot in her heart in these 200 years. How have you been? Gongshu Eason was like a little girl, foolishly asking back. But in an instant, she realized it was inappropriate. While blushing, she hurriedly turned around and grabbed Gongshu Eason, cheerfully saying, Sister Eason, this is my Chong. When she said the word Chong, Gongshu Eason's voice instantly lowered a lot. This is the formation master I told you about, a Taoist expert. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been able to step into the upper 5th level in 200 years. Oh, sister, don't look down on him because he's only at the upper 4th level. He's the best at deceiving people. That year, Sister Gusu was at the middle 5th level, but she admitted that she wasn't his match. Oh, right, I forgot again. He's also a lightning cultivator expert. You can compare notes with him on the 5 Chi Righteous Thunder. Hee. Chapter 4474. Gongshu Exin, who was a little shy at first, was in high spirits at the end. She couldn't help but laugh, as if the toy she had hidden for a long time was finally seen by others. Boom! Gongshu Minghu's head seemed to be hit by a hammer. His face was pale, and he didn't know what to say or do. Junior Gongshu Ming greets Daoist Xiao. Seeing Gongshu Exin praise Xiao Hua so much, although Gongshu Ming was puzzled, he didn't dare to neglect and respectfully saluted. Get up. Xiao Hua lightly waved his hand and said, Xiao Hua and Exin are old friends, you don't need to be polite. Many thanks Daoist Xiao. Gongshu Ming saw Xiao Hua's bearing, and his suspicions were mostly gone. The atmosphere in the hall was a little strange. After all, many people saw Gongshu Minghu humiliate Imo Jianli, and at this time, these 2 girls from the Gongshu family, who were called aunts by Gongshu Minghu, actually called Xiao Hua Sr. This really stepped on Gongshu Minghu's face to the ground. Daoist Xiao. Suddenly, Gongshu Ming seemed to think of something and respectfully said, My Gongshu family's granduncle Jingyi is downstairs. Would Daoist like to see him? This. Xiao Hua hesitated and replied, Xiao Hua and the Gongshu family aren't familiar with the others, it's not appropriate. Don't worry. Hearing Xiao Hua say he wasn't familiar with the others, Gongshu Eason hurriedly called out, Daoist Xiao, my family's granduncle Jingyi is also proficient in some Daoist techniques. He's already a 7th-level Daoist master, only 1 step away from becoming a sage of literature. If Daoist Xiao listens to granduncle Jingyi's advice, perhaps your cultivation will improve even further. Xiao Hua looked around at the expressions of the Confucian cultivators. He knew that after Gongshu Exin and the others left, these Confucian cultivators would gather again. So he nodded and said, In that case, Miss Exin, please lead the way. Good. Daoist Xiao, please. Gongshu Exin and Gongshu Ming looked at each other, eyes filled with joy, and quickly walked up the stairs. Xiao Hua turned to look at Imo Jianli and smiled. Daoist Imo, come with me. I have something to ask you. This good. Imo Jianli was even more confused when he heard that Xiao Hua's cultivation was even stronger than a 5th-grade origin energy. However, he didn't dare to delay and hurriedly followed after. On the other hand, Gongshu Exin had come to find Gongshu Minghu. Now, he was left here. Gongshu Exin and Gongshu Ming had forgotten about him before they left. Gongshu Minghu hesitated for a moment. Although he looked embarrassed, he still hurriedly followed Imo Jianli out of the hall. Gongshu Jingye was already waiting for him downstairs. He did not dare to be negligent. Several people had just disappeared when the entire hall was once again filled with discussions. Although he didn't know what they were talking about before, their only topic now was probably Xiao Hua, Daoist Xiao. Xiao Hua followed Gongshu Exin and Gongshu Ming to the stairs. Gongshu Exian and Gongshu Ming walked in front, whispering something. Occasionally, they would sneak a glance at Xiao Hua, then pursed their lips and chuckled, looking very excited. Xiao Hua looked on helplessly. He was embarrassed to eavesdrop. However, he and Gongshu Exian had only talked about Songlang Zi's cave residence. Presumably, the two were talking about the thrill at that time. Xiao Hua nodded politely to the two, and also whispered to Imo Jianli about the state of Shi. As for Gongshu Minghu, he followed behind the four from afar, like a tail. The Gongshu family's floor was not close to here. There was no flying restriction in Star Picking Tower. However, in order to show respect, everyone did not fly unless there was an urgent matter. Gongshu Exian and the others walked down the stairs. After about the time it took to brew a cup of tea, they passed several floors of pavilions and walked out of the stairs. Along the way, there were many family disciples going up and down the stairs. Many people greeted Gongshu Exian. Clearly, Gongshu Exian's reputation was very well known among the family. Many family disciples almost ignored Xiao Hua and Imo Jianli. Xiao Hua naturally did not have time to look at their faces. He frowned as he listened to Imo Jianli's story. At this time, he also understood the reason. After Imo Jianli, Qiu Jian, Liemo Ming, and Ji Dong returned from the disaster relief in Shi. Because of their contributions, they were rewarded. Imo Jianli was rewarded with a higher-level cultivation method. However, this reward was not fully implemented. Because there was no fruit of Guanyin Bodhisattva in Longevity Town, the entire Shi became the focus of Yu Province, and even the 9 provinces of the hidden immortal continent. Not only was Xiao Hua's battle with Jiang Sheng not mentioned, even Imo Jianli and the others' rescue of the people in the town of Longevity was also erased. There were even Confucian cultivators who blamed Chongyun's sect for the lack of Guanyin Bodhisattva in the town of Longevity on the unfavorable inspection of the development of the Buddhism sect. They did not fulfill the responsibility of a Confucian sect, especially when the town of Longevity was slowly becoming the #1 town of the Buddhism sect in the Zhongxian continent. The Confucian cultivators made things difficult for the Chongyun sect. They demanded that the Chongyun sect be responsible for this matter and proposed countermeasures. Under such circumstances, the Chongyun sect could only push out Zhu Junfeng, Mr. Taiyan, and the others from the Longevity Academy, as well as Imo Jianli, Qiu Jian, Liemo Ming, and Ji Dong. After all, Zhu Junfeng was in charge of the Longevity Academy, and Imo Jianli and the others had been to the Longevity Town and had personally experienced that milestone. Punishment was necessary, and so was punishment. Everything had to be explained to the Confucian cultivators of Yu Province. Zhu Junfeng and Mr. Taiyan's punishment did not need to be discussed in detail. As the leader of Qiu Jian and the others, Imo Jianli did not want the other 3 to bear the blame, so he took all the blame. Fortunately, although Shangguan Feiyu, as the head of Chongyun's sect, could not resist the pressure of Yu Province's Confucian cultivators, he was lenient in dealing with Imo Jianli. He did not make things too difficult for Imo Jianli and only expelled him from Chongyun's sect. After Imo Jianli left Chongyun's sect, he did not change his name and join other sections. He only became a professor in some unknown colleges. It could be considered a blessing in disguise. Imo Jianli, who had thrown away glory and trifles, returned to tranquility. He, who was engrossed in reading, found the opportunity to break through the noble spirit river. His cultivation also flowed like the river, and he reached the level of a scholar. However, after reaching the level of a scholar, Imo Jianli needed a more profound Confucian cultivation technique. Although the noble spirit river was the most widespread technique left in the hidden immortal land, after reaching the level of a scholar, it belonged to the secrets of various sections. It was very difficult for cultivators without a sect to obtain it. Imo Jianli could only go to Zhaixing Lu to find a suitable technique. Later, due to a coincidence, Imo Jianli passed the test of Zhaixing Lu and was listed as one of the candidates to enter Xingyue Palace. Unlike Xiaohua, Imo Jianli had an agreement with Zhaixing Lu. He would listen to Zhaixing Lu's arrangements and participate in the grand meeting of Xingyue Palace, and Zhaixing Lu would provide Imo Jianli with the conditions to cultivate. With this opportunity, Imo Jianli's cultivation became much smoother. In the past 200 years, his progress was also gratifying. When Xingyue Palace discovered that Xingyue Palace might appear in the sacred realm of Thousand Demons, Imo Jinli and the rest of the cultivators were sent to the sacred realm of Thousand Demons by Zhai Xinglu. Therefore, not only did Imo Jinli not know about Bai Qingyu, but he also did not know about the divine demon blood pool. As for Chongyun's sect, when the Longevity Town became the #1 town of the Buddhist sect, it was already in the eyes of the Bodhisattvas. It was destined to be the center of tragedy. Chongyun's sect did a lot of effort to expel Imo Jinli and punish Zhu Junfeng. They also made a lot of compromises. The entire Chongyun sect was like duckweed in the wind and rain, struggling bitterly. However, after the Longevity Town's Shaojian Temple's abbot, Lu Shan, who did not have any cultivation, was mysteriously killed, Chongyun's sect could no longer hold on. Although this incident was the last straw that broke the Chongyun sect's back, it was also a heavenly tribulation that the small Chongyun sect could not withstand. Chongyun's sect was annihilated by a bodhisattva who came out of nowhere. Whether the bodhisattva who annihilated the sect was a Buddhist or a Confucian cultivator, whether he was venting his anger or trying to frame them, no one knew the truth, just like Lu Shan's death. The death of the entire Chongyun sect was even more tragic than Lu Shan's death. Lu Shan's death almost led to a war between the immortals and Buddhas, which led to the Nirvana Sutra seeking. But the death of Chongyun's sect was really like duckweed, falling into the wind and rain. Unless Imo Jinli mentioned it to Xiaohua now, who else would remember that unremarkable little Confucian sect 200 years ago? Seeing Gongshu Yisin and Gongshu Yiming slow down, Xiaohua stopped and looked at Imo Jinli, saying, "Jinli, when I first arrived at the Longevity Town, I encountered the Liaojiang incident. I also met a Confucian cultivator like you, who is as noble as a river. I have a very good impression of you. The Liaojiang incident, the root cause is related to a disciple of mine. How about this, as compensation, from now on, you will follow me?" At this point, Xiaohua hesitated again. He originally wanted to take Imo Jinli as his disciple. However, he also had a premonition that he could not casually take in his disciples. Previously, he took in Yuanya, Fu Jiwen, Lu Yi, Wang Bianfei, Wu Tian, Chang Yuan, Jiang Hong, and Yu Zhongquan as inner disciples. But when they arrived at the ruins, Wu Tian chose to stay in the upper world for his own pursuit. Xiaohua's inner disciples stopped at 7. After that, he took in Li Xiang, Xiong Yi, Prince Lan, Chang Yu, Xin Songzi, and Reverend Jingting as outer disciples. In Bai Qingyu, Xiaohua took in Ao Zhantian and Su Tingzi as outer disciples. However, it was also in Bai Qingyu that Chang Yu died, Prince Lan's loyalty was doubted, and Xiaohua's number of outer disciples fell to 7. Perhaps it was because he had just experienced the hand of cause and effect. Xiaohua became alert. He felt that he could only accept 7 disciples and could not accept more. If he accepted Imo Jinli, then he would have more than 7 disciples. Even if there was really something wrong with Prince Lan, Imo Jinli had already taken the last disciple spot. But Imo Jinli was only a 4th-level literature master. With Xiaohua's strength, he probably did not have much time to teach such a low-level Confucian disciple. Moreover, Xiaohua already had a candidate in mind for the last disciple spot. Therefore, Xiaohua hesitated. Chapter 4475. Junior appreciates Senior's kind intentions? Imo Jinli smiled. Junior is a Confucian cultivator. It would be inconvenient for me to follow Senior. Moreover, Junior is a disciple of the Chongyun sect, which is related to the Longevity Town's conflict. It would also bring trouble to Senior. Haha. Xiaohua laughed and said, "If you didn't say this, this Xiao would have hesitated. But since you have spoken your mind, how could this Xiao disappoint you? This Xiao may not have the time to teach you a Confucian cultivation technique, but this Xiao remembers that you should cultivate a Confucian sword technique. This Xiao has a disciple who is good at sword techniques. This Xiao thinks that he should take you as a disciple of the Fortune Gate." Fortune Gate? Imo Jinli was stunned. He couldn't believe his ears and shouted, "When did Senior enter a Confucian sect? This junior doesn't seem to have heard of a Confucian sect called the Fortune Gate." While the two were talking, Gongshu Minghu had already walked behind them. Xiaohua looked at Gongshu Minghu and walked towards the pavilion. He said, "This matter is settled. When we come out of the Bright Moon Palace, this Xiao will take you to see him." Senior. Imo Jinli hurriedly chased after him, wanting to say something. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua smiled and said, "You don't have to say anything. If you see this Xiao's disciple and feel that it's not suitable, then it's fine. It's not too late to refuse." Xiao Hua didn't think that Imo Jinli would refuse Yu Zhongquan and Chang Yuan, who were already at the 7th level. Oh, okay. Facing Xiao Hua's arbitrary decision, Imo Jinli was helpless. He nodded slightly and followed behind Xiao Hua. However, his thoughts were different from Xiao Hua's. He didn't believe that Xiao Hua's disciple would have any outstanding cultivation. Of course, he didn't complain about why Xiao Hua didn't take him as a disciple. Imo Jinli was a grateful person. After being expelled and homeless, he felt that Xiao Hua's kindness was a kind of enjoyment. Turning the corner, they came across a small hall. Gongshu Yisin and Gongshu Yiming walked to the entrance of the hall and looked back. When they saw Xiao Hua and Imo Jinli coming over, they smiled at each other and quickly walked in. When Xiao Hua entered the palace, he saw a tall young Confucian cultivator who looked similar to Gongshu Yisin. The Confucian cultivator had a smile on his face as he looked at Xiao Hua. Next to him, Gongshu Yisin was holding his arm and acting like a spoiled little girl. On the two sides of this Confucian cultivator, there were a few men and women who were around the 5th or 6th grade of origin energy. These men and women all had imposing appearances and were intelligent on the inside, like dragons and phoenixes among men. Needless to say, this person was the Gongshu Jingyi that Gongshu Yisin had mentioned, the 7th level elemental energy grandmaster. Looking at Gongshu Jingyi sitting steadily on the chair, waiting for him to pay his respects, Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. He had really lifted a stone to smash his own foot. He originally disliked Zhu Qing's respect for him and wanted to find a more approachable feeling. He didn't expect that as soon as he met Imo Jinli, he would be humiliated by Gongshu Minghu. Gongshu Yisin came over to smooth things over for him, and then he had to follow her to pay his respects to a 7th level elemental energy grandmaster. Gongshu Yisin had good intentions. After all, the guidance or care of a high-level elemental energy grandmaster was a kind of opportunity. Gongshu Yisin would disdain to introduce ordinary cultivators. However, Gongshu Yisin had met Xiao Hua. How could a human Taoist Grand Ascension stage cultivator meet a Confucian grandmaster with the power of a junior? Etiquette. Etiquette. Xiao Hua sighed. The etiquette of Confucian cultivators is a bit pedantic, but in essence, it is a kind of order. As the Immortal Realm's executioner, Su Ji upholds it. I was a bit rash today. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua slightly straightened his body, about to reveal his cultivation level. However, at this moment, a slightly excited voice came from behind him. Yiming, you also came to the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm? I just came to Star Picking Tower and heard that the Gongshu family was also here. I was thinking that since you are a junior of the Gongshu family, how could you not be on this trip to the Star Moon Palace? Look, this is the thunder amplification wood that I found for you. It will definitely be useful for you to cultivate the 5 Qi righteous thunder. Haha. Xiao Hua did not need to turn around, nor did he need to look back, nor did he need to use his divine perception to check. Just this voice alone was enough for Xiao Hua to laugh. He could clearly tell that this was Duanmu Qing, who had formed a grudge with him in Star Picking Tower in the Bronze Pillar Nation. That night, Xiao Hua had taught Duanmu Qing and Duanmu Qiu a lesson. He had also said in front of Duanmu Qing that he wanted to see if the so-called Confucian family still had justice, fairness, and justice. Duanmu Qing had also made it clear that she did not believe in justice, fairness, and justice. She had asked Xiao Hua to wait for her justice. After that, when Xiao Hua had almost forgotten, he had finally waited for the Duanmu family's justice. That was the pursuit of Duanmu Liangsheng in Songlang Zi's cave. Duanmu Liangsheng could be considered a hot-blooded man, but he was after all a disciple of the Duanmu family. Although he admired Xiao Hua, he had no choice but to kill him. Fortunately, although Xiao Hua's strength at that time was slightly inferior to Duanmu Liangsheng, it was not a problem for him to escape. Therefore, he was able to escape from the Duanmu family's justice. Duanmu Liangsheng had also obtained an opportunity in Songlang Zi's cave and did not find trouble with Xiaohua again. What Xiaohua did not expect was that when he had just returned to the 3 continents from the primitive continent and had not even taken a step into the hidden immortal continent, all the karma from before had actually appeared here. Not only did he see Imo Jianli and Gongshu Exin, but he also saw Duanmu Qing, whom he had almost forgotten. Suddenly, Xiaohua had a bad premonition. Damn it, it can't be. Could it be that Suji's divination skills are so miraculous? This Star Moon Palace is indeed the last time I leave. When the 2 of them return to the immortal realm, I will also have the opportunity to choose. Otherwise, with so many old grudges, how could they all appear here? Of course, this thought was just a flash. He had some understanding that it was not his old grudges, but the opportunity of the Star Moon Palace. Because of the appearance of the Star Moon Palace, all the families in the hidden immortal continent would send disciples who needed opportunities to come to the Star Moon Palace. Not only the disciples of the families who had grudges with him, but also the disciples of the families who had grudges with him would all have the opportunity to come to the Star Moon Palace. They would also, at the appropriate time, resolve the grudges between them. While Xiaohua was thinking, Duanmu Qing had already said something excitedly. She walked past Xiaohua and arrived in front of Gongshu Jingyi. She bowed and said, "Great-grand-uncle, Junior Duanmu Qing from the Duanmu family pays respect to great-grand-uncle." Gongshu Jingyi was waiting for Xiaohua to greet him, but Duanmu Qing's sudden appearance stole Xiaohua's limelight. Gongshu Jingyi could not stand in front of the Duanmu family. He retracted his gaze from Xiaohua and raised his hand. "Get up, this is Star-Picking Tower. No need to be too polite." Humph. Gongshu Exin was not willing to give Duanmu Qing a good face. She snorted and said, "You're just a branch of the Duanmu family, and you dare to call yourself a disciple of the family? Aren't you afraid that the Duanmu family's ancestor will scold you?" Duanmu Qing did not dare to say anything in front of Gongshu Exin. Gongshu Jingyi's lips curled. He knew clearly about Gongshu Exin's arrogance. He also knew that her scolding of Duanmu Qing was reasonable. However, he could only scold her. Duanmu Qing is also a disciple of the family. There are some words that you cannot say casually. Great-grand-uncle, you think I want to say it? Gongshu Exin said coldly. If he did not pester Yiming Jiejia, even if I saw him, I would only treat him as a toad. He did not go back to look for a mirror. He is not only a branch disciple of the Duanmu family, he is also a literary master who has just stepped into spirit-refining qi. How can he be worthy of Yiming Jiejia? Moreover, Yiming Jiejia had already told him clearly 100 years ago that she did not wish to see him again. But what about him? Seeing Yiming Jiejia's soft personality, forcing her step by step, showing an infatuated face in front of the elders to gain sympathy. Isn't it just a thunder-amplifying wood? What's so great about it that he would give it to Yiming Jiejia in front of great-grand-uncle? This kind of wild ambition, great-grand-uncle is embarrassed to say it, but I will say it. Exi. Gongshu Yiming at the side also seemed to be unable to bear it. She pulled Gongshu Exin's sleeve and said, "Don't say it in front of everyone. This is not good." "What is not good about it?" "It is because you are always thinking for others that you have landed in such an awkward situation. Now many disciples of the aristocratic families know that this guy is pursuing sister. Even if there are outstanding disciples who want to propose marriage to sister, they would be embarrassed. They would be afraid of brushing away the face of the Duanmu family." Gongshu Exin understood Duanmu Qing's thoughts and hit the nail on the head. In reality, the Duanmu family does not even know of this guy's plans. It is not that bad. Gongshu Yiming's face was slightly red as she said in a low voice. Xiaohua originally did not like Gongshu Exin's outspokenness, but hearing it now made him very happy. He smiled and stopped walking, watching with interest. Duanmu Qing naturally did not know that Xiaohua was here. His face was slightly pale as he said in a low voice, "Senior Gongshu, Junior knows that my cultivation is shallow and my background is not as good as Senior's. So from Senior's point of view, Junior's actions are indeed so. But Junior can say it to Senior without any reservation, to the disciples of the Gongshu family. Junior can even say it to the heavens and the earth with a clear conscience. Love had no limits, no rank, and no strength. Perhaps Ming Lady feels that Junior is not suitable, but from the moment Junior saw Ming Lady, I have already treated her as my fairy. Junior does not dare to think too much because I am afraid that if I think too much, it will make that impression dim. Junior can only think faintly when the lanterns are lit, and hope that the night will make this longing last a little longer. Junior also knows that Junior is not worthy of Miss Ming, but Junior is willing to be one of Miss Ming's many admirers. Junior hopes that her path of cultivation will be smooth. Junior is willing to give up everything for her. Chapter 4476. Duanmu Qing spoke with deep affection. Not only did Gongshui Ming blush, even Gongshui Xian felt embarrassed and felt that she might have gone overboard. Duanmu Qing continued, Junior heard that Miss Ming's 5-chi thunder had reached a bottleneck and was unable to break through, so I have been thinking of a way for her. 200 years ago, Junior heard that the star-picking tower of Copper Pillar Country was bidding for the thunder-developing wood. Junior hurriedly went there to bid for the thunder-developing wood and give it to Miss Ming to comprehend. Unfortunately, Junior was deceived by a despicable Dao sect cultivator and was unable to bid for the thunder-developing wood. In the following days, Junior has been looking for opportunities. Fortunately, the heavens were moved by Junior. A few years ago, Junior finally bid for a similar thunder-developing wood at the auction of the Luo Merchant Union. After Junior obtained the thunder-developing wood, Junior hurriedly went to find Miss Ming. Unfortunately, Miss Ming was no longer in the Gongshu family. Junior asked around but could not find Miss Ming's whereabouts. Later, Junior heard news of the Star Moon Palace and immediately understood. Although Junior is not a candidate to enter the Star Moon Palace, Junior still tried my best to ask a senior in the family to bring Junior here. Junior does not wish to enter the Star Moon Palace. Junior only wishes to see Miss Ming here and give her this thunder-developing wood. Junior also knows that as long as Miss Ming enters the Star Moon Palace, after she comes out, her 5-chi thunder will definitely break through the bottleneck and step into the upper 5th grade of essence force. Junior is even more inferior. However, Junior does not regret it. Junior hopes that Junior can be a pebble under Miss Ming's feet. As long as Miss Ming can step on Junior safely, Junior will be satisfied. As she spoke, Duanmu Qing took the thunder-developing wood and walked in front of Gongshu Ming. She looked at Gongshu Ming affectionately. Damn it! Xiao Hua was flabbergasted. This guy really knows how to talk. I can't compare to him. Even Xiao Hua said so. Gongshu Ming's face was naturally hot. She lowered her head slightly and raised her slender white hand to take the thunder-developing wood. Seeing that Gongshu Ming was about to take the thunder-amplifying wood, Gongshu Xian, who was trying to break up the couple, came to her senses. She hurriedly pulled Gongshu Ming behind her and said coldly, Humph, I hate this kind of flowery speech the most. You want to trick me with a piece of wood? If you have the ability, come here on a rainbow cloud. Gongshu Xian looked up at Xiao Hua and said, Xiao Hua, I remember you have a thunder-devouring bead, right? 200 years is enough for you. Why don't you lend it to Big Sister Ming first? Don't worry, after you borrow it, my Gongshu family will definitely protect you and won't let the immortal palace find trouble with you. Xiao Hua. When Duanmu Qing heard Xiao Hua's name, she was startled as if she was bitten by a snake or scorpion. She turned to look at Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua had a bitter smile on his face, but he was feeling very good in his heart. He had just used his divine ability and was about to make trouble. When he heard Gongshu Xian was disrupting the situation, he immediately took 2 steps forward and touched his nose. He looked thoughtfully at Duanmu Qing and said, Young Master Duanmu, that despicable cultivator from the star-picking tower in the Bronze Pillar Country who used despicable means to deceive you is here. I want to ask you, what despicable means did I use to deceive you at the auction at Star-Picking Tower? You. Duanmu Qing was dumbfounded. Those few words of his were merely to set off the atmosphere, to emphasize the hardships of not being able to obtain the thunder amplification wood. However, he never expected that Xiao Hua, whom he hadn't seen for several hundred years, would actually be right behind him. Moreover, he had directly passed by Xiao Hua without even noticing him. Moreover, Xiao Hua's question was even more heart-wrenching. Not to mention that Xiao Hua did not have any despicable means. Even if he did, that was star-picking Tower's auction, and it was from hundreds of years ago. Duanmu Qing bringing up old scores in star-picking Tower's territory was not only giving star-picking Tower a bad look, but also finding trouble for herself. Details determine success or failure. The remorseful Duanmu Qing really wanted to grab the extra words out of everyone's ears and swallow them herself. Ha ha ha. When Gongshui Xian heard this, a look of surprise appeared on her face. She hurriedly said, "What? You were the one who bid for the Thunder Developing Wood? How could you have won against young Master Duanmu from the Duanmu family? Quickly tell us, how despicable were you at that time?" Seeing that Gongshui Xian did not mind blowing things up, Xiaohua was also happy to add insult to injury. He nodded and said, "Even if Lady Gongshu did not say this, I would still say it. Not to mention my innocence, even star-picking Tower's justice will be tarnished." Hearing Xiaohua mention justice, Duanmu Qing's face turned pale. Xiaohua did not add any details and narrated everything from the time he met Duanmu Qiu to the time he said fairness, justice to Duanmu Qing. Indeed, without waiting for him to say much, when the group of Gongshu family disciples heard that Duanmu Qing sat on the dragon horse carriage and headed towards star-picking Tower, their faces were filled with disdain. The aristocratic family's carriages all had their own standards and were not for any aristocratic family disciples to sit on. Gongshu Xian could sit on it. Gongshu Yiming could sit on it. Murong Songyun could also sit on it. But Duanmu Qing, a side family disciple, could not sit on it, because she could not represent the Duanmu family. Xiaohua naturally did not know about this rule, but the Gongshu family disciples knew it clearly. Without mentioning anything else, how could Gongshu Yiming accept her flamboyant personality? Oh, that's right. After explaining the matter at Star-Picking Tower, Xiaohua slapped his forehead. Looking at Gongshu Xian, he seemed to have thought of something and said, "I almost forgot. Duanmu Gongzi is a person who keeps his promises. That was what I said that day. Duanmu Qing, I will remember your words, but I will give you a word of advice. Don't think that no one knows what is right and wrong here. Even the aristocratic families of Confucian cultivators cannot stop the mouths of the people. A Duanmu family carriage driver is now Jin Gue. You can only let him bully others, but others cannot retaliate. I will wait for your Duanmu family's condemnation. I want to see if the aristocratic families of Confucian cultivators still have justice. And at that time, Duanmu Gongzi's reply was, justice. Let's go. Let this Taoist wait for his justice. Xiaohua looked at Duanmu Qing and smiled. Duanmu Gongzi, did I say anything wrong? Duanmu Qing bit her lips and did not reply. And the result? Say it. Gongshu Xian was interested and urged. What happened after that? After that, Lady Gongshu, do you still remember the 5th grade middle-tier Confucian cultivator who suddenly appeared in the Cloud Mountain Maze? Xiaohua asked. Gongshu Xian actually did not have any impression of Duanmu Liangsheng, but at this time, she did not know how to reply. She nodded like a chicken pecking rice. Yes, that extremely powerful Confucian cultivator. And he is the justice that the Duanmu family gave me, Xiaohua said with a smile. Oh, Duanmu Liangsheng? Order of Death? Gongshu Jingyi, who was at the side, was watching the younger generation quarrel like a play. However, when he heard this, he suddenly understood. He frowned and said a few words in a low voice. He looked at Duanmu Qing and didn't say anything. However, the disciples of the Gongshu clan who were present all despised her. Everyone knew what Duanmu Qing had done after the Order of Death. In front of such sinister thoughts, the sweet words that Duanmu Qing had said earlier had become a honey sword. Yes, Xiaohua smiled. The Duanmu family's Order of Death is the justice that Duanmu Gongzi gave me. If not for my good luck, I am afraid that I would not have the chance to talk about Duanmu Gongzi's heroic deeds in front of everyone. Sigh. Duanmu Qing sighed slightly. She looked at the crowd and her gaze landed on Gongshu Yiming's face. She said, "Things are not as simple as Immortal Xiao said. However, I do not wish to explain anything at this moment. Because the same thing can be said by different people, it will have different effects. I admit that I do not have a glib tongue like immortal Shao. Everything will be revealed in the future. However, Missy Ming, even though I may have done something wrong, your cultivation cannot be delayed. This thunder-amplifying wood is very important to you. It is innocent, you must accept it. What is the use of a mere thunder-amplifying wood? It is just a chicken rib. Only those who do not understand the lightning cultivation arts would treat it as a treasure. Xiao Hua took 2 steps forward and disdainfully glanced at the jade box in Duanmu Qing's hands. Inside the jade box, there was a lone thunder-amplifying wood that was sealed within. Xiao Hua said coldly, Duanmu Qing, do you think that you can let Miss Yiming's 5-chi legitimate thunder break through the bottleneck with a piece of wood that has been struck by lightning? If that is the case, there are probably a bunch of lightning cultivators in this world, right? Duanmu Qing tried her best to maintain a cultured and refined image in front of Gongshu Yiming. Even when Xiao Hua exposed her earlier, she did not get angry. She understood that Xiao Hua was just a Dao cultivator. Even if she was from a side branch of the Duanmu clan, she was still a disciple of the clan. Her words were far more important than Xiao Hua's words. There was no need for her to confront Xiao Hua here. She could just wait for an opportunity to make up for it. But now, Xiao Hua had once again belittled the thunder amplification wood that he had painstakingly found as worthless. He looked at Xiao Hua and said coldly, this one does not have the qualifications to know if this thunder amplification wood is useful for Miss Yiming's cultivation. However, this thunder amplification wood was something that Miss Yiming occasionally mentioned on that day, so this one remembered it in my heart. This one also admits that this one really does not know how useful this item is for Miss Yiming to break through her bottleneck. However, I know that as long as I work hard, Miss Yiming will definitely benefit from this thunder-amplifying wood. What about you? Could it be that a Dao cultivator who is not even at the 5th grade of elemental energy knows that this thunder-amplifying wood is useless to Miss Yiming? What qualifications do you have to say such useless words? Chapter 4477. At this moment, Xiao Hua naturally wouldn't put Duanmu Qing in his eyes and wouldn't be so bored as to argue with her. Xiao Hua faintly smiled. He raised his hand and took out a silk handkerchief from his bosom. He said, for me to be able to say such words, I naturally have my reasons. I won't be like some people, whose mouth is full of nonsense and only one word is true. Saying this, Xiao Hua placed the silk handkerchief in front of Gongshu Yiming, saying, Miss Yiming, do you think this is useful for your cultivation of the 5-chi thunder? This is? Seeing Xiao Hua take out a silk handkerchief instead of thunder-developing bead or thunder-developing wood, let alone Gongshu Xin, even Gongshu Yiming blushed. She looked at Xiao Hua with some confusion. After all, silk handkerchiefs were mostly for private use by female cultivators. Men and women giving silk handkerchiefs had other meanings. Damn it! Others might be puzzled, but Duanmu Qing was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. She already thought that Xiao Hua was revealing something to Gongshu Yiming in front of everyone, flirting in front of her. Xiao Hua, what do you mean by this? Gongshu Xin was straightforward, shouting, I told you to take out the thunder-amplifying bead. What do you mean by this? Why don't Missy Xin take a look first? Xiao Hua turned and smiled at Gongshu Xin, saying, you have a certain level of attainment in formations. You should be able to see it. Oh. Gongshu Xin looked at Gongshu Jingyi. That Gongshu Jingyi just looked at her with a smile and didn't say anything. He was also young. How could he not know the jealousy between young people? Seeing Gongshu Jingyi not saying anything, Gongshu Xin said, raising her hand to take the silk handkerchief. When she took the silk handkerchief, she used her silver moon pupil. Just one look and her expression changed. She looked at Xiao Hua in disbelief. The clear eye technique in her eyes didn't disappear. She exclaimed, Xiao Hua, it's true. Don't worry. Xiao Hua smiled. Don't you know my reputation? Che. Gongshu Xin retracted her silver moon pupil, curling her lips, saying, what reputation do you have? That day in the cave, you cheated so many people. Then, Gongshu Xin didn't give the silk handkerchief to Gongshu Yiming. Instead, she held it in her hand. Smiling at Yiming, Sister Yiming, can I make a deal with you? Can you lend this item to sister to study? What is this? Gongshu Yiming looked confusedly at the silk handkerchief in Gongshu Exion's hand and asked. Gongshu Exion opened her mouth and seemed to have some misgivings. She didn't give the handkerchief to Gongshu Yiming and transmitted to Gongshu Yiming. This is the Immortal Palace's 5 brocade cloud painting. Ah? Gongshu Yiming was ecstatic. She almost cried out, how is this possible? The 5 Chi Thunder was the purest form of cultivation in the Immortal Palace. The Gongshu clan also had it, but the flaws were obvious. They couldn't fix the flaws in their cultivation method during the tribulation. Therefore, Gongshu Yiming had always wanted to get the cultivation method of the 5 Chi Thunder from the Immortal Palace. This 5 brocade cloud painting was not a complete lightning cultivation method, but it contained the 5 Chi Thunder. If Gongshu Yiming had this item to study, she could easily break through her current bottleneck. Gongshu Yiming screamed and quickly covered her mouth, smiling at Xiaohua. Thank you, immortal friend Xiao. Xiaohua smiled. No need to be so polite. If there's anything you don't understand. Without waiting for Xiaohua to finish speaking, Duamu Qing, who was at the side, retracted her hand and withdrew the awkwardness in everyone's eyes. She interrupted Xiaohua's words and said with a hint of anger, Xiaohua, I did not want to lower myself to your level when you used the matter from several hundred years ago to frame me. But then you used filthy words to slander my Duanmu clan's kill order. This matter involves the dignity of my Duanmu clan. So, I represent the Duanmu clan to invite you to join the battle to bury the hatchet. And? When Gongshu Jingyi heard this, he unconsciously snorted from his nose and said unhappily, Duanmu Qing, you are in my Gongshu family's pavilion, representing the Duanmu family to challenge Xiaohua. What is the meaning of this? Duanmu Qing was startled and immediately realized the impropriety of her words. She hurriedly smiled and said, Great-granduncle, it is all Junior's fault. Junior was really disheartened by this Dao sect cultivator. My words were wrong. Junior apologizes to great-granduncle and apologizes to the elders of the Gongshu clan. Finishing, Duanmu Qing did not give Gongshu Exian and the others a chance to speak. She said to Xiaohua, Xiaohua, you and I originally had a personal grudge. Now, the battle to bury the hatchet at Zhaixinglu is about to start. You may not be a disciple of a great clan, but you are in Zhaixinglu now. You can still join the battle. How about it? In the battle to bury the hatchet, let's settle our previous grudges? This time, Duanmu Qing kept on talking about personal grievances. Gongshu Jingyi just looked indifferently and didn't say anything. Gongshu Exine glared at Duanmu Qing and said coldly, What? Angry out of humiliation? All your tricks have been exposed. You can't live with your face? You want to be silenced by the battle to bury the hatchet? One look, and you can tell he is a bluff. You can't beat Xiaohua, so you want to use the power of the Duanmu clan to suppress him? Then, Gongshu Exine waved her hand at Xiaohua and said, Xiaohua, ignore him. You are not a disciple of a great clan. Why are you participating in the battle to bury the hatchet? Senior Exine. Duanmu Qing looked at Gongshu Exine and said seriously, Xiaohua may not be a disciple of a great clan, but he is in Zhaixinglu, and this is before the opening of the Star Moon Palace. He also has a grudge with Junior. This meets the conditions for the battle? Of course, if Xiaohua does not wish to participate, Junior will not force him. He only needs to apologize to Junior in front of everyone during the battle to bury the hatchet. Junior may consider forgiving him, and can also consider asking the sect to take back the kill warrant. At this point, Duanmu Qing glanced at Xiaohua and said, Besides, if a man of indomitable spirit does not even dare to accept such a small challenge, what right does he have to call himself a man? What right does he have to cultivate the powerful lightning energy? Xiaohua laughed involuntarily when he heard Duanmu Qing's provocation. He really did not know how to answer. How could he, a human Mahayana realm cultivator, be so calculative with this guy? Even if he only revealed the strength of a peak 4th grade Yuan Qi, it was not possible to bet with him, right? Seeing that Xiaohua did not speak, Duanmu Qing naturally thought that Xiaohua was timid. She added fuel to the fire and said, How about this, Xiaohua? If you do not wish to participate, you only need to apologize to me here, and I will forgive you. Duanmu Qing. Gongshu Exian snorted before Xiaohua could say anything. If you are so capable, why don't you fight Xiaohua one-on-one during the battle to bury the hatchet? Don't think I can't see your sinister intentions. You just want to borrow the Duanmu clan's blade to kill Xiaohua. Oh, Xiaohua asked curiously. Exian, could it be that during the battle to bury the hatchet, it doesn't have to be two disciples who have personal grudges? Of course. Gongshu Exian was a little angry. Since the various clans are participating, we have to consider their reputation. It doesn't have to be disciples with personal grudges. Don't be fooled. He can't beat you, so he wants someone else to do it. Xiaohua. Duanmu Qing did not care that Gongshu Exian had exposed her thoughts. She smiled and said, if I were you, I would definitely go up and give it a try. After all, my Duanmu clan's kill order is still in effect. Any Duanmu clan disciple can kill you, and they can even return to the sect to receive a reward. If you are lucky enough to win, the kill order will no longer exist, and you can cultivate in peace in the future. Fine. Xiaohua looked at Duanmu Qing, who was acting like a clown, and sneered in his heart. Since Xiaohua didn't have to do it himself, he could just find a Fortune Gate disciple from the Shenhua mainland. Hence, Xiaohua nodded and said, this Xiao agrees to fight with you. Good. Duanmu Qing's eyes flashed with a cunning look. She smiled and said, looks like you are a man. Come, let's make an oath. Duanmu Qing raised her right hand and looked at Xiaohua. Xiaohua waved his hand slightly, as if he was shooing away a fly. He said, no need. You are not worthy. Damn it. Duanmu Qing could not help cursing in a low voice. So you are so cunning. If we don't make an oath, who knows if you will participate? Perhaps, you've been planning to slip away for a long time? Duanmu Qing was a little confused, just like Ao Qian from the Southern Sea Dragon Palace. However, one was for power, the other was for love. Oh, or it could be said that behind love, there was also the pursuit of power. Duanmu Qing pressed on, trying to force Xiaohua into a dead end. However, when Xiaohua fell into a dead end, he also fell into a dead end in Gongshu Yiming's heart. His various schemes aroused Gongshu Yiming's suspicion of his past actions. Since that is the case, Xiaohua muttered, turned to look at Imo Jianli and said, Jianli, help me make an oath. I have a new idea. I will change your master. Imo Jianli was stunned. He did not understand what Xiaohua meant. However, Imo Jianli was a straightforward man. Since he felt that Xiaohua's temper was good, he did not care about Xiaohua's cultivation level. He raised his hand and said, okay, young Master Duanmu, please, you. Seeing that Xiaohua not only refused to strike his palm to make an oath, but also let a mere scholar disciple take action on his behalf, he was so angry that his face had already turned green. This was really a kind of naked humiliation. You're really going too far. Good. Since you dare to make an oath with me, then remember the fight. Gritting her teeth, Duanmu Qing raised her hand and hit Imo Jianli's palm. She said, in the fight, there is no need to talk about life and death. Imo Jianli was used to seeing the faces of aristocratic disciples. He said coldly, isn't it just a life? If you have the ability, then come and take it. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.